Chapter 105. The Person Trapped in the Desert. Chapter 105. The Person Trapped in the Desert. At this moment, Qi Wanqing and Ning Qingxue had already entered the desert. However, they didn't come by themselves as originally planned. Instead, there was a whole vehicle crew. Although Qi Wanqing didn't want her father intervening, her father didn't bring up about anything in the past this time and allowed her to enter the desert. Thus, she could only retreat a step. Besides, she knew that her father was doing it for her sake. With her compliance, Qi Yujun not only arranged a few cars for Qi Wanqing, but also sent people to go with her in the desert. This was using his authority for private matters, but if it hadn't been for his daughter, Qi Yujun would have never done such thing. However, he had no choice. The daughter he hadn't seen for a few years was going to the desert, and no matter how he had tried to persuade her, she wouldn't agree. He didn't want to have a big fight again, so he could only comply and send people to protect her. Yimo carefully inspected the wall he was sleeping at overnight. Feeling that it was very sturdy, he was assured and opened up the tent. It would be too hot for sleeping bag at night, so he didn't bother pulling that out. At night, Yimo didn't want to sleep. He was cultivating outside the tent, but by midnight, he felt he was being watched again. This feeling made him very uncomfortable, and he felt more weird. He wasn't the only person to come to the desert, but why did this only happen to him? Yimo didn't continue waiting this time. He packed his things into the bag and carried his bag. He felt that the thing that was watching him stayed where it was. He wasn't sure if it was the same thing from last night, but since he was being watched, it meant that there was something attracting it from him. As for what it was, he didn't know. Was it still a bear cockroach watching him? Yimo knew this was impossible because it wouldn't be able to survive in the desert. He came to the desert to find the purple heart vine. Did this thing come because of the purple heart vine in his bag? Because other people didn't have it, only he did. If that was the case, this would mean that the thing was sensitive to the purple heart vine. After Yimo put on his bag, he wasn't in a rush to attack this thing. Instead, he took out a metal nail and marked it with his spirit sense before suddenly standing up and walking away from the wall. At the same time, he shot the nail towards the black shadow. Chhh. Yimo knew he hit his target and immediately chased. This time, he had everything with him, so he wasn't afraid of getting lost. With his food and water as well as his powers, he would be able to survive a month or two in the desert without problems this time. Yimo didn't lose it. He followed closely behind. Although the shadow was on the border of escaping his spirit sense range, he had marked it with a nail. Yimo believed that as long as his spirit sense focused the nail, he would be able to catch that shadow. Although Yimo followed the shadow closely, he felt intrigued about the shadow's stamina. He was sure his nail hit it, but how was it still able to run so fast? The shadow that attacked him a few days ago was like this as well. Just when Yimo was thinking of a way to speed up and catch the shadow, a feeble cough sounded from the distance. The sound was so small that if his hearing wasn't great, he definitely wouldn't be able to hear it. Just phasing for this moment, Yimo lost track of the black shadow. However, Yimo wasn't annoyed. That black shadow must have gone hiding somewhere. The black shadow was shot by the nail. Even if it took the nail out, he worked the nail and would be able to find it with the spirit sense mark. It would be fine at least within a few hours. Now that the thing disappeared, Yimo couldn't be bothered finding it. He just followed where that moan was before. Two men and a woman leaned weakly against a tattered tent. Yimo's spirit sense scanned them before he even went there. The three had messy and dirty hair and looked very shabby. The two men actually carried guns with them. Although that woman didn't have a gun, there was ferocity in her expression. Yimo seemed to have seen this ferocity somewhere. Looking at the position they were sitting, it was obvious these three weren't in the same group. Although they all looked like they were about to die, the two men still stared vigilantly at the woman as if preventing her from playing any tricks. As soon as Yimo arrived, the three were immediately frightened. It was in the middle of the night in the desert, and a figure suddenly appeared. No matter how brave they would still be frightened. Although they were shocked, it was obvious they had no strength left to get up. However, one of them pointed a gun at Yimo but didn't fire. Yimo noticed their cracked lips and their sandstorm tattered clothes. It was obvious they had been in the desert for a while. "Who are you?" A person holding a gun asked nervously at Emo, "Are you a human or a ghost?" The woman looked very threatening, but how could she not be afraid seeing a person carrying a bag in the middle of the night in the desert? She subconsciously moved toward those two men, but perhaps she was out of energy, so she only moved a little bit. Who I am is not important, but if you continue to point a gun at me, I'll guarantee you won't see tomorrow's sun, Emo said faintly. He hated people pointing guns at him, and these three didn't look like ordinary people. Even when they were fatigued by the desert, he could still feel their ferocity whether it was the woman or the two men. To Yemo's surprise, the person suddenly took the gun back and coughed before saying tiringly, "I hate the morning sun right now." Yemo suddenly felt this person was a bit cute and smiled. "You are lost in the desert?" At this moment, the three could be sure Yemo wasn't a ghost. He should be someone exploring the desert. The man who packed the gun away also felt relieved. Perhaps they could be saved by this person. At this moment, he didn't ask Yemo for water and said admiringly, "Brother, I really admire you. You can survive in the desert as if you were taking a stroll. Don't tell me you came here on foot." Yemo didn't answer the man's words and looked at the other two. The man explained, "I'm Li Hu, and this is my partner in crime, Chung Hongja. We were apprehending a criminal in the desert, but we lost our way. Our car is out of oil, so we dumped it in the desert. We wanted to ask for backup, but our communication and GPS were all useless. Then, we walked some distance trying to find a place with signal, but it was worse. We are still lost, and it has already been many days now." Seeing Yemo didn't talk, Li Hu took out his phone and said, "Originally, I thought we could still call for help even if we were lost, but a few days later, the phone was out of battery. Plus, in order to capture her, we went into the desert in a hurry and basically didn't prepare anything. Although we caught her, but we're trapped in the desert and probably will die in a day or two." This Li Hu seemed to be free-spirited and didn't take death seriously. Yemo looked at the woman thinking that although she had been tortured by the desert to the point that she couldn't move, her ferocity was still there. Since they were capturing criminals, it meant these two were from the police or another department like that. "Shameless, you two are the criminals. Is that thing yours? What right do you have to get it from me? Besides, it's not even on me," the woman immediately rebutted, and her tone was rather contemptuous. Yemo couldn't be bothered with these things. He didn't care who was right or wrong. Seeing these three unable to sustain much longer, he took out 15 bottles of water and gave 5 to each. Since these three weren't from the same group, he would give it to them separately in order to avoid conflict. He didn't give them food since he had seen some food in their bags. "Thanks, brother. I don't need this much. 3 are fine. You are still in the desert. Keep some for yourself." Li Hu took some water and thanked him immediately. Yemo gave them water because he had found a lot, and another reason was because that yellow-dressed woman was generous when saving him. He felt he was affected too. Of course, Yemo liked Li Hu's personality. This person was optimistic. Now that he told Yemo to keep some, Yemo had a better impression of him. Chun Hongja took the water and thanked Yemo, but didn't say the water was too much. He quickly opened a bottle and drank everything. He looked at the remaining water and didn't continue drinking. He knew he couldn't drink too much now. The woman took the 5 bottles and thanked Yemo excitedly. "Thank you. You are a really good person. I'm called Feng Tian, and I only need 3 bottles too." Then, she gave 2 bottles back to Yemo. Yemo waved his hand. "I still have 10 bottles. You don't need to give it to me. I have enough." However, he felt Feng Tian's temperament didn't match with her name, One. She looked ferocious, but her name was very docile. Chung Hongja saw that out of the 3, he was the only one to not say anything and drank first. He felt quite awkward. Li Hu drank half a bottle and felt that he had recovered a lot. Then, he looked at Feng Tian and said, "Okay, you say you're not a criminal, but do you dare to say you weren't from Beisha? You dare to say that the explosion in Tandu a few months ago was unrelated to you? Are you still going to say you didn't take that thing? We already said. As long as you give me that, I can even give you payment and won't look for trouble. Besides, do you even need it?" Feng Tian opened her mouth, but eventually didn't say anything. Note 1. Tian means sweet. Chapter 106. Chase. Chapter 106. Chase. Yemo suddenly understood. The explosion a few months ago at Tandu was done by Wendong and him. Back then, he had heard Gong Huishan say that Wendong was from Beisha. Although Yimo didn't know what kind of organization it was, now that Li Hu said that Feng Tian used to be in Beisha too, he finally understood why he felt that familiar feeling from her. It was because of Wendong. Yimo looked at Li Hu and suddenly smiled. You actually accused wrongly Feng Tian this time because first, she doesn't have what you're looking for, and second, she hadn't even tried to take it. Yimo didn't tell them about the explosion a few months ago. He only helped Feng Tian because she was indeed innocent and hadn't exposed Wendong. Besides, Li Hu also said that if she had taken it out and gave it back, she wouldn't be held responsible and would even be rewarded. Nonetheless, this thing was kind of useless to Yimo. How do you know? Do you know what we're looking for? Li Hu just recovered some strength after drinking water. He stood up, but his body was still weak. Yimo waved his hand. You don't need to know how I know, but since you mentioned a reward for this thing, we could make a deal. It doesn't matter even if I sell it to you. My friend doesn't need it anyway. Li Hu immediately called out in surprise. Of course we agree, definitely. Name a price. We will definitely accept it. He didn't even say that Yimo couldn't ask for too much. From this, it could be seen how important this thing was to him. Besides, he probably knew that if Yimo could give water to strangers in the desert, he definitely wouldn't be some nasty person. Before Yimo could respond, Feng Tian yelled in surprise, do you know where Sister Dong went? The hope in her eyes was obvious. This, I don't know. Yimo could tell that not only Feng Tian came from the same organization as Wendong, but they seemed to have left it together, and their relationship was quite good. Hearing Yimo's words, Feng Tian's eyes flashed with a sliver of disappointment. Yimo, however, turned around and gave a look of approval to Li Hu, thinking that his name didn't match with his character one. Seeing Li Hu looking desperately at him, Yimo smiled. How much can you give? $500,000, Li Hu said. Feng Tian immediately rebutted. This thing could easily sell for a few million on the international market. How can you even say 500,000? Li Hu's eyes flashed with guilt after hearing Feng Tian's words. For him, 500,000 was the highest he could give. After all, his department wasn't the same as those foreign departments. He also understood his price was absurdly low, perhaps not even 10% of its worth. Yimo could tell from his expression that 500,000 was probably the highest price Li Hu could afford. Anyway, he really didn't need it, and it took up a large space in his bag, which annoyed Yimo quite a bit. Since he had a good impression of Li Hu, he wouldn't waste time, that he surely didn't have, haggling on a model that was useless to him. Now, his main purpose wasn't to earn money, but of course, it was always good to have money, and Yimo was very satisfied if he could get $500,000 out of nowhere. In fact, 500,000 is indeed a bit low. How about I give another 200,000? Li Hu said awkwardly. Chung Hongzhi suddenly interrupted. Li Hu, where are you going to get another 200,000? Are you going to use your own money? Before Li Hu replied, Yimo waved his hand and said, Okay, 500,000 is good. I'll sell it to you. Then, Yimo took out that model and the information and passed it to Li Hu. You're talking about this, right? Li Hu was stunned as he had never expected things to be so successful. Feng Tian, who hadn't expected that it would be on him, was also surprised Li Hu finally understood and took it as if he were dreaming. He flashed it with a torch and said, Yes, it's this, thank you. I really didn't expect to find this in the desert. However, I don't have any money with me. Even Li Hu felt embarrassed himself. Although this was very important to him, it still didn't belong to him. He couldn't just speak empty words. However, Yimo smiled and said, Then you owe me, leave me a number. I'll call you when I get back, and you'll give the money to me then? What? Not only Li Hu was shocked, but even Feng Tian and Chung Hongzhi were surprised and wondered how someone could have so much trust when doing business. Li Hu really didn't know what to say. He could tell Yimo wasn't an ordinary person, but he didn't expect him to be so trustful. He didn't ask how Yimo got the thing because he didn't want to know the details. Everyone had their own secrets, and since this person trusted him so much, he shouldn't be too curious about it. After thinking about it for a moment, Li Hu saluted, Friend, I, Li Hu, won't be too polite with you since it doesn't only concern me, but we are definitely friends now. I also want to ask for your name. Otherwise, I wouldn't know who to give the money to. I'm Yemo. Yemo didn't hide his name. When Dong already knew it anyway, and the Song family should be aware of his presence here too. Yemo? Li Hu repeated but didn't think about it too much. Then, he said, my number is 13817XXXX, Beijing. Suddenly, Li Hu stopped because he realized Yemo had already disappeared. Only a bottle and a compass were left behind. Immediately after, a voice reverberated. There are 3 pills in the bottle. Take one each, and you will recover soon. Goodbye. Li Hu picked up the bottle and thought for a long while before saying, Brother Yi is really a magical person. Then, he opened the bottle and looked at the 3 black pills. Can this thing even be eaten? Cheng Hongzhe looked at the pills and frowned. As long as Brother Yi gave it, I believe they are edible. Then, Li Hu ate one without hesitation. Feng Tian sneered and also took one from Li Hu's hand. Only Qin Hongzhe was hesitating as he looked at the remaining pill. Afterward, Feng Tian stood up with a face full of surprise. She whipped her hair and said joyfully, There are actually such magical pills. If you don't want this, give the remaining one to me. Then, she tried to take the remaining pill in Li Hu's hand. Li Hu was also surprised. He thought that this pill was so magical. He only took one, and he immediately felt his fatigued body recovering. Seeing Feng Tian trying to snatch it, of course, he didn't give it to her, and instead threw it to Qin Hongzhe. Quickly eat it, recover your strength, and we will leave the desert immediately. Then, he looked at the direction Yemo disappeared before mumbling once again. Brother Yi is really a magical person. He could possibly be from one of the ancient martial arts families. Only they would have such magical pill, and only they would be able to walk in the Taklamakan desert so casually. Yemo didn't have time to talk with them because he had felt that black shadow again. He wanted to know what this thing was and if it was sticking with him for the purple heart vine. Of course, Yemo only looked for 10 minutes or so, and finally saw another obscure black shadow. Although it was very fast, Yemo's wasn't slow either. The black shadow looked like the root of a tree, and Yemo even wondered if it had transformed from a tree root. Even though Huyang trees were said to live for millennia, Yemo knew his idea was too otherworldly. Yemo was so focused on chasing the black shadow in front of him, he didn't even look at the direction or notice his path. However, this time he had his bag with him and didn't need to worry about this. He didn't believe that a desert could devour a cultivator with supplies. So a few hours later, when the sky was getting brighter, Yemo could already start to see what was in front of him. That black figure really was a Huyang tree root. The sky was bright, and Yemo wouldn't worry about this thing getting away. But now, when this thing was right in front of Yemo, it suddenly disappeared again. If it wasn't for the fact that Yemo had been prepared and left a spirit sense mark on the nail, he would have lost it again. At this moment, Yemo had finally understood. No wonder it kept appearing and disappearing when he chased it the night before. This shadow could travel through the sand, and without the mark, he couldn't keep up with it. And now that Yemo understood, he wouldn't let it go. This thing was extremely fast in the sand too, but Yemo kept a tight chase. He refused to believe that he couldn't chase up an animal in the desert. This shadow not only had a strong life force but stamina as well. After playing tag with Yemo in the desert for the entire day, it finally slowed down. Yemo also gasped a breath. He was feeling tired. He took out a bottle and drank it clean. Suddenly, Yemo was dumbfounded. Originally, he knew this thing was deep in the sand, so he was still able to track it down. But now, this shadow appeared to have understood Yemo and went deeper and deeper into the sand, until it gradually reached out of Yemo's maximum detection range. Yemo's spirit sense mark could be felt at most within 50 meters. But now, this shadow went more than 50 meters underground and, eventually, Yemo lost the shadow completely once again. Yemo stood depressed at where the shadow dug down and was very annoyed. He was wondering if he should dig open here and look, but it was too dangerous to dig randomly in the desert. He still had a clear memory of the danger when he almost sunk into the desert. Note 1. Who means fox here? Chapter 107. Underground Desert. Chapter 107. Underground desert Emo really didn't want to give up something he had been chasing for a whole day and night. But now, he knew it was hiding underground, and there was nothing he could do. If only he were in the third stage Chi gathering, he wouldn't hesitate to dart into the desert. In the third stage, he wouldn't be afraid of being thirsty because he would be able to use the most important magic of all, water ball art. With the water ball art, he would be able to convert spirit Chi into water, and as such, he would never have to worry about dying of thirst. Furthermore, in the third stage, he wouldn't die even if he didn't breathe for a whole month in the desert. Unfortunately, one level difference was huge. This was a milestone. This black shadow was targeting him. Emo came to the conclusion that it was definitely his purple heart vine that attracted it because other than that, he brought the same thing as everyone else. It was only the purple heart vine that other people didn't have. However, this thing was quite sneaky. He could think of killing Emo first before taking his stuff. Then, Emo suddenly thought of something important. He had been chasing this black shadow for a whole day, but why did it only crawl into the depth now? According to its cunningness, it should have thought of this idea long ago. What did this mean? It meant that it could only crawl in at specific locations. Thinking about this, Emo immediately rejoiced. This place looked the same as any other part of the desert, but there were too many mysterious remains buried underneath, including all those ancient cities lost in the flow of time. Perhaps this place was a tunnel towards an underground city, and maybe the whirlpool he fell into last time was also a tunnel towards an underground city. Sigh. Thinking about it, Emo felt a little disappointed again for not being in the third stage yet. Emo set his gaze on his bag. He still had 10 bottles of water, plus the bag of water the yellow-clothed woman gave to him, and all the pills Emo had made. With these, he would be fine even if he was buried for half a month under the sand. What was he afraid of? He came for the purple heart vine in the desert. Since that thing also came for it, it meant that it had seen it before. Otherwise, it wouldn't be so sensitive. Let's go inside. As soon as Emo made up his mind, there was no stopping him. He took out a shovel from his bag and started to dig where the black shadow disappeared. Sand flew as Emo dug deeper, and soon, he was already more than 10 meters in. It was already starting to feel suffocating, but something like that was nothing to Emo. He was a cultivator. Albeit being only in the second stage of Chi gathering, he could still breathe internally with enough water. Emo's digging speed was very fast, and 3 hours later, he had already dug more than 100 meters. His method consisted of digging a big chunk and sending it back before pushing away the two sides. If his bag hadn't been so large, perhaps he would have been 200 meters in by now. At that moment, Emo estimated that the tunnel behind him should have already been blocked completely. He dug another 200 meters, and his shovel suddenly hit something hard. Emo felt overjoyed. He should have arrived. This hard thing should be a rock, and as Emo scanned with his spirit sense, he discovered that it was indeed a big green rock. It was very thick, almost a meter in diameter. Emo wasn't impetuous. He sat down first and took a pill with some water to recover his chi. He was digging diagonally, so this stone was probably around 200 meters underground. After he had taken an hour to rest, Emo completely recovered his energy. He gathered the chi into the metal spade and hacked towards the stone. Immediately, rubble flew everywhere. The stone was like mud under Emo's spade. In less than half an hour, Emo dug a meter-deep hole into the stone. Just when Emo crawled into the hole, the sand outside fell into the hole and quickly covered it up. The place Emo landed was very spacious and looked like a street. However, there was a bad odor everywhere that was weird and indescribable, similar yet unlike of a rotten smell. He followed the street and walked tens of meters while expanding his spirit sense out. Finally, he realized it wasn't a street, but a road made of stone blocks. Emo carefully walked forward along this road, keeping his spirit sense on the surrounding because he was sure that Black Shadow also came here. He just didn't know where it was. And Emo was sure that there were entrances other than the one he dug up, which perhaps didn't even need digging. After walking for a while, Emo hadn't seen a single house on the side of the road, and instead thought that it looked a lot more like a valley, so it became obvious that this place wasn't some underground city. As if he had just sensed something, Emo stopped his footsteps and even though he was a cultivator, he felt the atmosphere around became eerie. A row of huyang tree roots was lined up at the two sides, and what gave Yemo goosebumps was one of the huyang tree roots. He could clearly see with his spirit sense that the root had a metal nail on it, one that had been marked with his spirit sense. His nail had really hit a huyang tree root, and even if Yemo didn't want to believe it, the facts were in front of him, so he had no choice. There weren't such eerie feelings even in the cultivation realm, but here it had occurred right in front of his face. Yemo definitely wouldn't believe that such a huyang tree root could avoid his tracking for a day and night and still move so fast. Besides, that huyang tree root appeared to be anchored there and wouldn't be able to move from this position. Yemo was on full alert as he walked beside the huyang tree root. He studied it carefully with his spirit sense and realized that his speculations appeared to be right. It seemed that it was really the metal nail that he had thrown, but in order to confirm it, Yemo took out his torch and saw with his own eyes that the metal nail on it really belonged to him. His spirit sense was right. It made Yemo wonder how a huyang tree root could move so fast. He didn't touch that nail and instead went into contemplation. Suddenly, Yemo remembered that 2 days ago, he had hit the black shadow around its shoulder, but this huyang tree root had the metal nail on its upper body. The position wasn't right. Then, Yemo found another problem. He saw that this nail had been exposed a bit on the outside. Yemo thought that, with his power, if he were the one to have shot this nail at the root, there was no way that the nail wouldn't be completely lodged inside. All these signs showed that Yemo wasn't the one that inserted the nail there, but it was done later by someone or something else. Who could put a nail in the huyang tree root? Yemo frowned and carefully pulled the nail out. Soon, he found some blood and even a long strand of hair. This nail really was put there by something. He could tell by looking at the hair that the thing that had been hit was probably a monkey-like animal. Yemo found it very strange that there was such animal in the desert. However, he knew that monkeys and apes were very smart, so it was natural that they could think of such ways. When Yemo thought the problem clearly and knew what sort of animal he was chasing, everything became so clear. This animal was not only very smart, but also good at running away. There was only one road underneath the desert, and other than the huyang tree roots, there were sand and stone boards. It seemed that a long time ago, someone made this stone block road leading to somewhere, and even specially planted the huyang tree root at the side. Yemo increased his speed and walked along the stone road. He knew that since the shadow could escape here, it meant that it had already run inside. As long as he followed this road, he could chase up to it. However, what made Yemo disappointed was that he had walked here for half a day, but not only did he not see the shadow, he also didn't even know if there was an end to this road. If it wasn't a one-way road, Yemo would have thought that he was lost again. After so long, Yemo estimated that he probably wouldn't be able to catch up to the shadow and felt helpless. The place this thing had escaped to was too absurd, and besides, it was too smart. Yemo didn't bother tracking the shadow anymore and didn't even look at what was on the side. He simply started to rush forward. After another half a day's time and a few turns on the road, there was finally a stairway leading up. However, it wasn't long, only 20 to 30 meters or so. Yemo walked up to it and scanned out with his spirit sense. Then he understood that he came to another open space. However, a huge stone was blocking the entrance. He ran for an entire day around on the stone block road and had no idea which hairy animal had tricked him. This road was probably more than 10 kilometers long, but was a bit curly, giving enough time for Yemo to think more thoroughly about this place. Who planted this with huyang trees at the side? Why is that road so long? This was a hefty project. Could a huyang tree grow underground? Yemo wasn't sure if it had grown above the ground before and then sank down. Since Yemo wasn't able to know for sure, he shook his head and walked to the end of the stairway. He moved the stone block, however, no sand fell, which implied that it wasn't covered by the desert. He walked through the entrance and discovered an immense underground desert. However, when Yemo scanned with his spirit sense again, he couldn't help but be immediately shocked. Chapter 108. Re-encounter. Chapter 108. Re-encounter. The scene he saw was a desert, but this wasn't the main point. The main point was that it was grown full of purple heart vine. Under the scan of Yimo's spirit sense, there were hundreds of them. Yimo took out the torch and shone it over the surroundings. There was a dense patch of purple heart vine even in the distance. Furthermore, they were even thicker than the wrist. They definitely had been growing for thousands, or even tens of thousands of years. Purple heart vine. Although it is the spirit herb of the lowest level in the cultivation realm, it would be very valuable if it was more than 3,000 years old. One could even sell it for hundreds of spirit stones. But now, there's so much here. Yimo held his breath. He was indeed shocked. He did find purple heart vine. Moreover, there was so much and they were all very old. However, he didn't feel the slightest sense of joy. Instead, he felt a faint sadness. What was this? Yimo didn't move. Instead, he closed his eyes and felt with his spirit sense. Indeed, this place was surrounded by purple heart vine. He saw right, but that faint sense of sadness was also real. Suddenly, Yimo noticed a problem. It was that purple heart vine was a spirit herb, and they had been growing for many years, making them high-level spirit herbs. However, he didn't feel a sense of spirit chi here. What was this? The purple heart vines still laid across the desert and didn't even change their shape at all. So even if these purple heart vine had withered, they could still be used for medicine. Yimo walked close to a purple heart vine slowly, and he felt a sense of rotting well up in his heart. He blew lightly, and the 3-meter-tall purple heart vine actually turned to dust. Yimo was stunned. He walked to a few more and blew. These purple heart vines all turned to dust and disappeared. As if feeling the moment of Yimo's arrival, these thousands of purple heart vine all turned to dust. If Yimo didn't see it for his own eyes, he would have thought something eerie happened again. The desert full of purple heart vine suddenly disappeared in an instant. Yimo stood there without moving, feeling extremely bitter. He looked for a long time and finally found the secret of the purple heart vine. However, this secret was useless to him. He had lost his interest of going to Kulu. Since he already found purple heart vine here, there was no point going elsewhere. Plus, even if Kulu had purple heart vine, it probably wouldn't be better than here. Yimo walked into the desert. No one seemed to have come here before. This desert wasn't big, and soon, he reached its end. A huge stone tablet stood before Yimo with the 2 words Ku Lake. So this was Ku Lake. It seemed that Ku Lake, like Luobu Lake, was a big lake, but eventually turned into desert. Yimo put his hand on the tablet, feeling a faint sense of disappointment. He didn't get what he wanted coming to the desert. It seemed that he could only return to his clinic and slowly cultivate his silver heart grass. However, if he wanted to do that, he needed to keep a low profile, and Yimo didn't really want that. Even if he wanted to, he already exposed himself in the Taklamakan, so perhaps he wouldn't even be able to keep a low profile. Yimo's thoughts suddenly stopped. He looked at his hand in surprise as he felt a faint sense of spirit chi pass from the tablet to his hand. However, that spirit chi was too weak, almost unable to be used for cultivation. However, even so, he still needed to make out the situation. He just dug out this tablet and cleaned up the dirt around it. A dried-up spirit chi appeared in front of Yimo's face. No wonder there was some spirit chi. It was a dried-up spirit well. Yimo was disappointed, however, because he understood why there was so much purple heart vine here. Originally, there was a spirit well here. This was really a pity. If this spirit well still had water, Yimo would perhaps even want to live here. Although it was dark, it was better than having no place to cultivate. Yimo felt the spirit well inside. He poured down a bottle of water and said, "A spirit well actually doesn't have water. Then, I'll give you some water." In the desert, perhaps only Yimo would do such a thing. He was a cultivator and had a natural gratitude towards spirit wells and spirit things. Plus, he didn't mind giving this bottle of water. Since he didn't find the purple heart vine, he was about to go out. When Yimo poured the water down the spirit well, something surprising happened. The spirit well actually emitted a thin spirit chi, as though repaying Yimo's bottle of water. Yimo felt this and surprisingly discovered that he could cultivate with this spirit chi. Thinking about this, Yimo was no longer stingy and poured all the water he had down, including the bag of water the yellow-dressed lady gave him. As expected, the spirit chi increased a little. Yemo quickly sat down and cultivated. The reason he didn't care about water was that he was in the latter part of Stage 2. As long as he could reach Stage 3 with this spirit chi, he wouldn't care if he had no water, because at that time, he would be able to use water magic. Time passed fast as he cultivated. Yemo didn't know how long he cultivated for, but it was approximately 3 to 4 days. When he woke up, he found that there was no more spirit chi from the well. Yemo could only helplessly stood up. This spirit well had been tried for too long, and because of that, it wasn't enough for him to reach Stage 3. However, Yemo felt his power and discovered he was at the peak of Stage 2, just a thin line from level 3. Perhaps in less than 2 years, as long as the opportunity came, he could ascend to level 3. Yemo bowed to the spirit well. No matter what, this spirit well helped him a lot. However, Yemo knew that no matter how much water he had, perhaps this spirit well could only emit this last spirit chi. Yemo didn't know how this place formed, but it seemed that someone intentionally used the desert as a barrier to protect this spirit well and purple heart vines. After eating some simple food, Yemo walked over to the staircase and climbed up another staircase. A few minutes later, Yemo arrived at the bottom of a stone board again. He moved it aside and sand fell, causing a piercing bright ray of sunlight to fall on his eyes. Knowing that he had already come out, he returned the board back before covered it up with sand. Perhaps one day, he would once again return here due to the dried-up spirit well. When Yemo stood in the desert again, he realized he was actually in a patch of forest. However, this forest was dead. There were dead young tree roots everywhere. Just when Yemo was thinking if this was the legendary demon forest, a few gunshots interrupted his thought, making him frown. There were gunshots? Did Nanqing's people chase here? But then he thought that even if it were Nanqing people, they wouldn't shoot without seeing him. But soon, Yemo understood. A yellow-dressed lady stumbled from the demon forest and dashed to the side. It was the girl who saved him. She had a red spot on her shoulder. She had already lost her bag, and a few men with guns even chased her here. Seeing their ferocious looks, Yemo knew they were from Nanqing. A sense of guilt rose from Yemo's heart. He didn't think that the woman who saved him was hurt due to him and being hunted. This woman not only saved Yemo, but in Yemo's heart, she was also like a goddess. However, now these bastards even dared to hunt her, so he immediately felt the intent to kill. The yellow-dressed lady was stumbling harder, causing Yemo to be quite surprised. Even if she couldn't dodge the gun, these few men shouldn't be a match for her. Why was she like this? He didn't have time to think. Just when Yemo was about to shoot out metal nails, a sudden chick-chick sounded. In the desert, it was rather piercing. This sound was getting louder and louder. Not only did Yemo hear it, but also the girl and those few men heard the sound. All the people looked at the direction of the sound unanimously, and what they saw was a patch of bugs with a disgusting flowery pattern at its back. There was countless ones of them all crawling out of the sand. Immediately, they covered a huge patch of ground, and this was just the beginning. From that small area, they then covered hundreds of yards in a blink of an eye. These bugs had 4 legs and walked extremely fast. The front of their mouth seemed to only have a single tooth. When countless of these bugs suddenly appeared in the desert making the chick-chick sounds, everyone felt a chill ran down their bones even with the sun shining brightly. The 3 Nanqing people immediately reacted and wanted to escape for their lives. However, these bugs had swarmed up. In a few breaths, these 3 didn't even have any bones left. Even the gun in their hands were eaten. The bugs that were involved in devouring them immediately grew larger and blacker. Even the pattern on their backs were clearer. Yemo gasped. He immediately thought of the yellow-dressed lady. She also saw the bugs, however. She no longer had any strength as her eyes reflected her loss and hope. Suddenly, she became really peaceful and just fell onto the sand. Chapter 109. Terrifying Human-Eating Bugs. Chapter 109. Terrifying Human-Eating Bugs. Yemo looked at the swarm dashing for the yellow-dressed lady. He didn't even think before charging at the girl with his fastest speed. Just a few seconds before the bugs came, Yemo carried the yellow-dressed lady and ran. As though discovering that the yellow-dressed woman was saved by Emo, these bugs were actually enraged, and they all swarmed towards Emo. Although the ordinary bugs couldn't keep up with Emo, those thousands that have eaten human flesh evolved to have an extremely rapid pace. They weren't any bit slower than Emo. Perhaps they were even a little bit faster. However, what made Emo shocked the most was that these few thousands bugs could actually half-fly, half-walk at their fastest. If they were to eat more human meat, would they grow out wings? Emo suddenly thought of locusts. If these bugs grew wings and flew out everywhere, then it would be a catastrophe. No one would be able to stop these bugs. Suddenly, Emo remembered the human-eating bugs in the desert. Were these them? The bag of the yellow-dressed girl in his arms had long vanished. Her hair was messy, and her face cover was slanted, showing half of her immaculate face. Just that almost made Emo lose himself. When he saw this girl with her face covered a few days ago, he was already astounded. But now that he saw half of her face, he felt even more astonished. There was actually such a woman in the world. However, Emo couldn't care with that now because the bugs were getting closer and closer. With his current pace, those bugs would catch up with him sooner or later. Emo was also getting more and more worried. If a few thousand bugs caught up with him and he was forced to a fight, those countless other bugs behind them would also catch up. Let alone his current second-level chi gathering. Even if he was at the third level, he would still get devoured. If he wasn't carrying someone, Emo certainly had the means to escape. However, it was impossible for him to drop the yellow-dressed lady. Not only did he have good feelings towards this girl, but she also saved him. If it were to reduce the load, he could only drop his bag. At this moment, the yellow-dressed lady opened her eyes. Realizing that she was in Emo's arms, she struggled a bit but soon discovered the tens of millions of bugs chasing behind them. She raised her head and saw Emo's face full of sweat as well as the bugs that were closing in. For the first time, she opened her mouth and said, "Thank you. Put me down and save yourself." Although her voice was weak, the crystal-clear sound it produced almost made Emo think that he was hearing a heavenly hymn. "Stop saying that. These bugs are so disgusting. If I drop you down, even if you're not scared of death, you would be disgusted to death." Emo knew it was useless to threaten this girl with death. Surprisingly, the yellow-dressed lady seemed to take in Emo's words and immediately stopped talking. Emo felt relieved. Luckily, this girl could actually talk. This meant that she wasn't a mute. After a long time, the yellow-dressed lady said, "I'm Luo Susu." "Luo Susu?" Emo repeated. Why did she have the same last name as his master? But immediately after, Emo heard the chick behind him and replied, "I'm Emo." "Emo," the yellow-dressed lady repeated. Hearing the sound of the bugs which were closing anything, she didn't say anything. She repeated the name as though to remember the person who risked his life to save her, although they would probably will still die in the end. Emo couldn't leave the girl behind. Watching the closing bugs, Emo had no other choice but to drop his bag. He took out 2 bottles of pills, the brush Chi Wan Qing gave him, the purple heart vine, and the silver heat grass seeds. Then, after thinking for a moment, he took out another empty bottle before throwing the bag. Soon, the bag was bitten into oblivion by the millions of bugs. However, these bugs didn't even stop and continued to chase after Emo. Without the cumbersome bag, Emo's speed increased a lot, and eventually, it was about the same as the bugs. Emo couldn't get rid of them, but they couldn't catch Emo either. Only Emo knew that with the current situation, he was at a disadvantage. These bugs could run for a few days, but he couldn't. With him carrying Luo Susu, perhaps a few hours later, he wouldn't be able to handle it anymore. He knew that he couldn't go on like this. Looking down on Luo Susu, he discovered that she had fainted once again. However, from her dry lips, he could tell she hadn't drunk water for a long time. Emo felt guilty. She gave him water, yet she was thirsty to such an extent. But at the moment, he didn't have water to give her. Emo really wanted to cut open his wrist and give her some of his blood, but he knew that even if he wanted to, the current situation would prevent him to do so. He was already in a life or death situation, and if he was to be injured, he would be giving himself to these bugs for dinner. Emo couldn't continue like this. Suddenly, Hei turned around and stopped. However, these bugs didn't have any intention of stopping. Seeing Yemo stop, they swarmed him faster. Yemo raised his hand and a few fireballs flew out, exploding amongst the bugs and killing a big patch of them. Yemo rejoiced. He didn't think that the bugs in the desert would be afraid of fire. The outer layer of their skin seemed to have been covered in a layer of oil. They had no resistance against the fireball. Yemo's fireball was of the lowest grade, so he didn't expect it to be effective. Now that he found a way, Yemo was merciless. He continued to throw out fireballs after balls. These fireballs exploded again and again, and countless bugs were burned to death. The burnt bugs emitted a disgusting scent, making people want to vomit. However, these bugs didn't have any wisdom, and they still continued to swarm him. Yemo estimated that his fireballs just then killed more than half of the evolved bugs. He wanted to kill some more, but the countless unevolved bugs followed up, and he could only continue to escape. Since his chi wouldn't be able to keep up, remaining still and releasing more fireballs wasn't a viable option. If he didn't reach the peak of the second level, he really wouldn't dare to do this. However, after Yemo's ravaging, only 2,000 bugs that could keep up remained. Yemo ran for a while and stopped releasing another few fireballs. When the bugs behind kept up, he started to run again. Using this tactic, Yemo finally escaped from the horrifying bugs by dusk, but he was almost dehydrated. He opened his parched throat and continued to run for another 2 hours, afraid that these bugs would suddenly catch up. He was terrified of these disgusting creatures. When the sky was completely dark, Yemo found a corroded wall. Without anything in hand, all he could do was to sit by the wall while carrying the unconscious Luo Susu. Yemo knew that the reason why she was still unconscious was because of thirst. However, he didn't have water. After resting for another hour, Yemo felt Luo Susu was really dehydrated. Although she seemed to be strong, but she could very possibly die of dehydration. As such, after thinking it through, Yemo cut open his wrist and pointed it at her mouth. Luo Susu drank a few mouthfuls and actually frowned. She didn't drink anymore, and Yemo didn't force her. After all, he still needed to find a water source. Since Luo Susu was unconscious, he needed to conserve stamina. Otherwise, they could only wait for their death. Yemo took the bullet out from Luo Susu's shoulder and fed her another pill. He used his chi to help her soothe her wounds and felt really fatigued. Thus, he slept against the wall with Luo Susu in his arms. When the next day came, the sun shone brightly again. Yemo felt he was fortunate that the Huyang tree root shadow didn't come. Otherwise, he would really be in danger. Yemo had come to the desert for more than 10 days, and the weather was getting hotter. Yemo knew that if he couldn't find a water source, let alone saving Luo Susu, even him wouldn't be able to get out of the desert. Soon, Luo Susu had woken up. She felt she was much better than yesterday, and she curiously looked at Yemo. She wanted to get up and walk herself, but discovered that although she was better, she still couldn't move. Yemo took out a biscuit and gave it to Luo Susu. Eat something first. Later on, we'll try to look for a water source or a way out. Luo Susu shook her head. At the moment, she didn't want to eat anything at all. She just glanced at her shoulder and realized that the bullet seemed to have been taken out. Seeing Luo Susu look at her shoulder, Yemo was afraid that she would imagine things, so he quickly explained, "I've already taken out the bullet in your shoulder. Sorry, it's my fault. Those people were hunting me." Hearing that Yemo took out the bullet, Luo Susu's pale face unexpectedly showed some ruddiness but disappeared quickly. She didn't continue talking, and instead closed her eyes once again. Under the scorching sun, the temperature in the desert was over 50 degrees. Yemo didn't want to talk. Even he couldn't handle it now. He survived another day, but he was yet to find any water source. He was getting more and more withered. At night, Yemo found a cave. Knowing that Luo Susu couldn't hold out much longer, he carried her inside it. Chapter 110. Bitter Well? Chapter 110. Bitter Well in the wind-corroded caves. Yemo looked at Luo Susu, who was getting worse by the minute. He was very worried, but he has withered himself. If he gave Luo Susu some more blood, perhaps he really wouldn't be able to hold on. Emo hated why he was just missing that little bit of spirit chi to break through. If he was on the 3rd level now, there would be no problems at all. His mind wandered as he seemed to see that yellow-dressed girl give more than half of her water to him. After a long time, the figure of the yellow-dressed girl appeared to merge with his master Luo Ying. He could no longer tell if she was Luo Ying or Luo Susu. Suddenly, Emo woke up once again. He knew he couldn't hold on any longer. But in his mind, he couldn't bear to watch the woman he brought agony die in front of his eyes. Thinking of this, Emo perseveringly slit open his wrists without hesitation and pointed it at Luo Susu's mouth. Emo's wounds healed very fast, but Emo had made up his mind. As soon as his injuries healed, he would slice it open again. He had this deep feeling in his heart that Luo Ying was Luo Susu. Otherwise, why would he fall for her so hard? He didn't know how many times he cut himself, but Emo felt a sudden sense of fatigue. He was aware that he was about to die. He didn't think that he still didn't walk out of this desert eventually. However, more intriguingly was that he died with a girl with surname Luo. Luo Susu, Luo Ying. Emo had a smile at the corner of his mouth. He thought that he didn't belong here anyways. Since he was going and could die with the woman he fell for, he was satisfied. The moment he went unconscious, he didn't think about anything. It was just the figure of Luo Ying and Luo Susu in front of his eyes. One moment, it would be Luo Ying. Another moment, it would be Luo Susu. Then, they merged. He didn't want to think. Regardless of whether it was Luo Ying or Luo Susu, he felt he was satisfied as long as he had one by his side. It was unknown how much time had passed, but when Luo Susu woke up, the moon was high in the sky. The whole cave was shone brightly by the moonlight. Suddenly, she realized that her face cover had been unveiled. Her heart skipped. But soon, she found that Emo's wrist was still at her mouth. The wound had formed a scab. She carefully removed Emo's hand to discover that Emo had slept on the sand. He was unconscious. He had his other hand around her waist, but still kept a smile on his mouth. Luo Susu eventually understood that she was saved by Emo. If it wasn't for Emo's blood, she would have been long dead. Emo risked his life bringing her out of the sea of bugs, and then used his own blood to save her. But why would Emo save someone he just met? Was it just because she gave a bag of water to him? Other than Lan Yu saving her life, for the first time, Luo Susu felt that she owed the young man in front of her. Although she might not live, but she still felt she owed him, even if she died immediately. Luo Susu had never been so close to a man before, much less being carried by one for 2 whole days and 1 night. The man below her had a pale face, but he was still smiling. She wondered what he was thinking about. Luo Susu extended her shaking hand and felt Emo's face. Though there was some sand on it, his features were easily distinguished. There wasn't a bit of fat. The moment she touched his face, he suddenly gave her a sense of familiarity, but that feeling felt to be on the brink of existence and non-existence. Something that she just couldn't grasp. Did he die? Luo Susu suddenly felt melancholic. Although she hadn't found Ning Qingxue, she still repaid the debt she owed to Lan Yu as she was going to lose her life in the desert. However, how could she pay back the debt she owed to a man who had already died? He used his own blood to save her. Although she was still going to die, she would die after him. Luo Susu couldn't understand why Emo would save her. She even imagined that when the bugs caught up, Emo would dump her instead of dumping his bag. If he didn't save Luo Susu, maybe he would still be alive. However, he dumped his bag instead of dumping her. Her heart that never felt a ripple suddenly ruptured for a stranger. Her memory was simple. From the age of 5, she was taken away to study some secret arts. 12 years later, she returned to thank Sister Lan Yu once. The place she was at was the Hidden Doors. What she learned were the ancient Chinese martial arts. Those from the Hidden Doors were not allowed in the mortal world. In addition, the place she was at, the Peace Door, had to stay away from the ruckus of the human world. Thus, only she knew the hardship of her coming to help Lan Yu. Other than repaying her debt to Lan Yu, nothing else tying her to the mortal world. Thus, her memories before 5 years of living were city memories. Eventually, after that, it was Hidden Door memories, simple and innocent. Although she had a young heart, She would never have any emotional ripples. In her eyes, other than training, there was nothing else. But today, a strange man died for her, and for the first time, she felt moved. Not for anything else, just for his actions. The people from the hidden doors were cold and only focused on cultivation. No one would risk their lives to save another. But right now, Luo Susu met someone who was willing to give up his life to save her. Perhaps when he dropped that bag, he was already preparing for the worst. Why did he do that? Luo Susu felt that she almost couldn't control her emotions. She couldn't bear Yimo's death. Her eyes were cloudy. She knew this wasn't good for her, but she couldn't hold it. Susu, our way of cultivation is one that requires a serene heart. You must remember not to let anything affect your emotions. Refrain from joy, worry, anger, pain. You must not get too emotional. Her master's words seemed to be echoing by her ear. However, Luo Susu just couldn't control her sorrow. She didn't know how her master controlled herself, but she couldn't even control herself over the death of a stranger. How could this be? Even if she owed him a life and she was about to die, why was she so sad? Suddenly, her heart ached as though all her power was about to leave her. Spew, Luo Susu spewed out blood. Looking at the thick red stain on the ground, Luo Susu's eyes were filled with dim sorrow. Was this the side effects of her cultivation method? She looked down again at Emo, who had his eyes tightly closed. She still couldn't resist her tears as it fell onto his face and rolled into his mouth. Luo Susu suddenly thought if all her tears fell into his mouth, would he come back alive? Emo, in a boundless darkness, suddenly saw a clear well. He felt he was very thirsty, and he jumped into the well. He drank all the water, but there was very little, and it was bitter. He opened his mouth and waited for more of the bitter water. Luo Susu's hand suddenly felt Emo's heartbeat. Although it was very faint, but it was still there. He wasn't dead. Luo Susu suddenly rejoiced. If only she had more water. Luo Susu didn't even think before grabbing Emo's sword and slitting her wrist too. Blood immediately gushed out, and she quickly pointed it to Emo's mouth. She wanted Emo to drink, but her blood was too viscous. Emo couldn't drink it. In desperation, Luo Susu shed tears again. She sucked from her own wrist and fed it to Emo's mouth. But with just that, she could no longer hold out and fell unconscious as well. Her blood was too thick, and in just a moment, it coagulated. Emo felt that bitter well water suddenly become viscous. His mouth seemed to feel a softness. He subconsciously gulped, and his dantian felt some heat. Emo was a bit conscious. He seemed to have noticed something and started to cultivate. He was getting more and more aware, and was even sure that he was at the edge of a breakthrough. He wouldn't let this opportunity pass. Emo's chi continued to go through cycles of cultivation. 1 cycle, 2 cycles. That membrane which stopped Emo from reaching the 3rd level was getting thinner and thinner, charging and charging again as well. Emo didn't have anything else in mind. He just wanted to break through that membrane. Luo Susu felt a warmth, as well as something that seemed to calm her spirit. She opened her eyes, enjoying that sense. She felt that even if she died like this, she would be very peaceful. She was very grateful towards the young man who brought her away from the bugs, allowing her to choose such a peaceful way of death. But soon, she understood that Yemo's body emitted this sense. Yemo still didn't open his eyes. His face was still pale, but it had more blood than before. Luo Susu rejoiced. She knew she couldn't endure much longer, but if she could save this person, then she would have no regrets. She would have paid back everything, and would be able to leave this world without any regrets. Then she had this sense that made her feel close to this man. She couldn't tell why she would feel such way. She slit open her wrist once again and sucked, passing the blood to Yemo's mouth. Yemo was at the critical moment of breaking through to 3rd level. He didn't expect such a thing to happen, but soon, he understood what woke him up. That viscous liquid in his dreams was Luo Susu's blood. That softness was her lips. He felt moved but just didn't know what that bitter water was. Other than his master Luoing, this was the first time Yemo was moved by a woman. He didn't like to shed tears and never did, but now, his eyes felt sore. Yemo wanted to stop Luo Susu's suicide, But he couldn't at this moment. He needed to focus all his effort on breaking through. Only then could he save both of them. Luo Susu suddenly raised her hand and wiped the tear from Yemo's eye as she mumbled, "Sister, you said today is my birthday. I didn't think I would have my last birthday here." Then, she fell on Yemo and fainted. Like Yemo, she fainted with a smile on her face. Regardless of whether she could save Yemo, she did all she could. She didn't know anyone and could leave without any regrets. Chapter 111. Third Level Qi Gathering. Chapter 111. Third Level Qi Gathering. At this moment, the Qi in Yemo's body had reached its max. Finally, he felt a rumble in multiple points of his chakra meridian. Immediately, he seemed lighter while feeling countless new Qi forming in his dantian. Everything became clearer. His spirit sense nearly reached a range of 50 meters. Was this the third stage of Qi gathering? He held down the joint in his heart as he suddenly wanted to howl. Countless hopes, and he finally reached third stage Qi gathering. Suddenly, Yemo remembered Luo Susu, who was still unconscious in his arms. He thought about the hand she felt his face with and was struck with another fit of worry. He knew Luo Susu was on the brink of death. Yemo immediately used a water ball magic, and a water ball filled with spirit Qi formed in his hand. Yemo put the water into an empty bottle and fed it to Luo Susu's mouth. However, Luo Susu couldn't drink the water in Yemo's hand. Her face was pale and had a smile at the corner of her mouth. Her flawless face was like the goddess from heaven, making Yemo's heart ache. Yemo used another water ball to wash her face. He thought and started using his Qi to help her recover her dried-up life essence. Yemo only forcibly reached third stage in such a bad environment. He didn't even consolidate his power. If he was to help recover Luo Susu, it would be very hard, and with one mistake, he would break all his meridians. However, Yemo didn't care at all. Even if he was going to be useless, he would still save this woman. And there was something Yemo didn't dare to think about. In his heart, there was more than one that this girl and the figure of his master merged together. Yemo's spirit Qi flowed incessantly into Luo Susu's body, helping her repair her meridians. If a cultivator were to see what Yemo was doing, he would think Yemo is crazy. A mere stage 3 Qi gathering dared to do something like this. This was suicidal. Even a stage 6 wouldn't dare to use his own Qi to repair meridians for others, yet Yemo did it when he was a mere stage 3. Yemo was indeed very tired now. He felt he was running out of spirit Qi, and once again felt the danger of lack of water. However, he knew he couldn't stop and wouldn't stop. Since he did it, he must save Luo Susu. Otherwise, his heart wouldn't be at rest for his entire life. Luo Susu had a long dream. She saw herself fall into a big fire pit as countless fire rushed towards her, consuming her. She felt she wanted to get out, but the fire prevented her. At this moment, a man helped her block the fire and take A to a cool forest. She really enjoyed the forest and didn't feel distressed at all. The annoying things in her body was soothed by the serenity of this place. Other than feeling a little thirsty, she really liked this place. "I'm thirsty," Luo Susu said subconsciously. However, that man who helped her block the fire didn't turn around. She felt his body was shaking. "What's wrong with you?" "I'm a bit thirsty," Luo Susu said once again. She believed that must be a lake in front. She only needed to scoop some water, and she would be able to drink. However, she couldn't move. Finally, the man turned around. His face was pale and covered in sweat. He smiled at her. "Go drink." Then, the man fell over. Luo Susu worried and hurried to hold up the man who saved her and blocked the fire. However, she stumbled and the man had disappeared. She also opened her eyes and felt she was still in Yemo's arms. However, other than feeling a little thirsty, she didn't feel any discomfort. She even felt comfortable just like in her dreams. What happened? Why wasn't he awake? What happened to herself? She knew her situation. How did she suddenly get better? Luo Susu suddenly felt that there was something beside her hand. It was a full bottle of water. She exclaimed and wondered where this water came from. Why would it suddenly appear here? She couldn't explain it, but didn't want to think. She opened the bottle and pointed the water at Yimo's mouth. At the same time, she wiped sweat from Yimo's forehead. Was it he who blocked the fire in her dreams? Yimo finally felt water. He drank a few mouthfuls and opened his eyes. He looked at Luo Susu, who fed him water, and smiled happily. He finally succeeded. Although he used up all his spirit chi and was in a rather dangerous situation, he didn't fail eventually. He successfully saved Luo Susu, and her cultivation would be faster. Too bad she didn't cultivate. If only she could cultivate with him. You're awake. Luo Susu looked with joy at Yimo, who had just opened his eyes. For the first time, she felt that there was joy in this world. Machim, drink some water too. I don't need it. I just need to rest for a bit. Then, Yimo closed his eyes and recovered his spirit chi. Luckily, he was just extremely fatigued and didn't injure his foundation. Luck amongst luck. Perhaps this was good fortune for those who do good deeds. Seeing Yimazuri close his eyes, Luo Susu knew there was no major problems with him, and so she took the bottle and drank a few mouthfuls. It was cool and a faint sweet taste. Water was very tasty. She had never drunk water that was this good before. After drinking, she suddenly realized that Yimo had drunk from this before. But then, she shook her head. She had already kissed him. So what? However, Luo Susu didn't drink much. Although she was very thirsty and wanted to drink more, she still had to leave some for Yimo. And she still wanted to ask Yimo where this water came from. Yimo closed his eyes and started recovering his chi. Luo Susu looked at him but didn't disturb him. She also saw there was a bag of biscuits on the side. She gave that to Yimo and didn't expect him to still have it now. In order to recover her strength, she took one and ate it while waiting for Yimo to wake up. Although it had been more than an hour and Yimo still didn't wake up, Luo Susu didn't seem worried at all, because she could tell from Yimo's breathing, which gradually calmed down. Although she didn't know what chi art Yimo was cultivating, she could tell it wouldn't be worse than the one she used. When Yimo woke up, the sky was already bright and a night passed just like that. He looked at Luo Susu, who had gotten out of his arms and sat on the side, feeling very happy that she was really well. Other than some weakness, her body had completely recovered. What made Yimo surprised and joyful at the same time was that Luo Susu didn't wear her face cover anymore. Instead, she took a bottle of water and looked at him quietly. Yimo saw Luo Susu's out-of-this-world complexion and was actually stunned. However, Luo Susu passed the water in her hand to Yimo. You drink some too. Thanks for saving me yesterday. Although she didn't know how Yimo saved her, she knew that she wouldn't be alive if Yimo didn't save her. Yimo suddenly smiled and said, "Drink the water first, then we'll celebrate your birthday. However, I don't have a birthday present for you. Tell me, what present do you want the most now?" Luo Susu stopped for a moment, but she immediately realized that Yimo must have heard her talk to herself to know that today was her birthday. She looked at Yimo's genuine smile and seemed to be influenced by it. She also became joyful. For the first time, she said cheekily, "If the heavens could give me a small pond, even if it was just the size of a ball, it would be my happiest moment now." Then, she subconsciously looked at her body that was full of blood and dirt. She really did hope there was water so she could clean herself. Yimo smiled and said, "Wait here for me, I'll be back soon." Then, he turned and went into the cave. Luo Susu looked at Yimo's back and actually felt a faint reluctance for him to leave. But soon, she removed this emotion from her head. Her way of cultivation forbade having such distractions. If she did have other thoughts, she may even do damage to herself, much less cultivate this art. So those who cultivate the serene heat art will never feel emotional towards other things. This was also why it was very hard for her to come out. Because as soon as she was tied by the things in the mortal realm, it would be hard for her to progress in cultivation. Luo Susu sighed. She was lost in thought. She had Yimo's blood in her body, and Yimo also had her blood. She was saved by Yimo, and Yimo was saved by her. Was there really no ties between them? But no matter what, she decided to never come out again after she went back. Perhaps she really shouldn't have come out this time. When she went back, she would tell Sister Lanyu that it would be very hard for her to come out again. Then, she thought about Yimo. This young man gave her such a deep-etched feeling. He seemed to have this metaphysical yet serene feeling on him. She really enjoyed staying with him, and ever since she woke up that feeling was growing more intense. He even gave her a faint sense of familiarity. That familiarity definitely wasn't because she saved him before and stayed with him in hardship. It was a real familiarity, and that made her feel very bewildered. Perhaps she knew him from their past life, Luo Susu thought. She would never show any feelings towards any man and wouldn't even talk to them. But the things she did for Yemo was way past her bottom line. She didn't even to look back on that. And he was mysterious. He could actually revive her and get a bottle of water. It was as though he would always have a way to do things when staying with him. Chapter 112, Birthday Present. Chapter 112, Birthday Present. Of course, Yemo didn't go to a very far place. He just dug a ditch a foot deep with an area of half a square meter on the hard rock inside the cave. Then, he continued to use his chi to convert spirit chi to clear water. Other than those that were sucked away by the rock, he used a whole half an hour to fill this ditch up. When Yemo returned to the cave, Luo Susu had already stood at the entrance of the cave, looking around as if a normal woman looking for her husband's return. She wanted Yemo to come back earlier. Without Yemo, she felt emptiness and loneliness. She had never felt this before. Even when she was in the desert by herself for many days, she didn't feel like this, but today, Yemo only left for half an hour and she was having this feeling. You're back. Seeing Yemo, Luo Susu felt joy from the bottom of her heart, but when the words came to her mouth, she could only say these few bland words. Yemo nodded and smiled. Luo Susu felt Yemo's smile was very authentic and looked very nice, so she couldn't help but to smile too. Yemo had never seen Luo Susu smile. He only knew that she was extraordinarily beautiful without smiling. But now that she did, she was like the goddess from the heavens descending upon the earth. Yemo was lost in that smile and couldn't help to think of a poem. Looking back and charming the world with a smile, all the women in the royal palace looked colorless in comparison. Perhaps this poem wasn't suitable because Luo Susu's smile didn't have the seductive sense of charm, but it made Yemo lose his spirit. Her smile was purely natural without a speck of dust. It was like a clear well or like a fresh spring breeze. Luo Susu blushed being looked at Yemo like that. Just when she wanted to say something, Yemo seemed to remember what he wanted to say. Susu, come with me. Susu? Luo Susu didn't object with what Yemo called her. She even wanted to ask where Yemo called her master the first time he saw her, but she eventually didn't ask. She didn't have too much curiosity. Yemo suddenly held Luo Susu's hand and ran towards that clear well he dug up. Luo Susu was shocked and was about to pull out her hand, but before she could, Yemo had already released it and pointed at that clear well and said, "Happy birthday! This is the birthday gift the heavens told me to give you. Do you like it?" Luo Susu stared dumbfoundedly at the pool of water in front of her. She couldn't suppress the joy and excitement in her heart for a long time. Was this really the birthday present the gods gave her? Otherwise, how could there be a pool of clear water in such a blazing sun? And the stone was very hard. It couldn't be man-made. Thank you, Gi. Luo Susu suddenly turned around and looked at Yemo. She couldn't say anymore. She once again felt the urge to shed tears. She even felt her power regressing, but she couldn't hold the joy in her heart. It wasn't purely because of this pool of water. It was when she wanted this pool of water the most, the water appeared right in front of her eyes. The thing that was impossible to attain appeared right in front of her. Susu, our serene door must stay away from joy, concern, anger, sadness. But today, she felt sad, felt happy, cried, and even fed a man with her mouth. Only today, she felt these emotions, and she felt she was a normal person. She didn't want to think about those roles and didn't want those chain. Perhaps even if she wanted them, it would be when she got back to the serene door. She didn't dare to ask where this water came from. She was afraid that if she asked, she would wake up from this dream and this water would disappear forever. This was her first birthday present and her favorite one. Unfortunately, she couldn't take it away with her. Luo Susu walked beside the pond and scooped up water, drinking it. It had the same taste as before. There was a faint sweetness and a clean, refreshing smell. Luo Susu wanted to wash herself. She turned around but found that Yemo had already left. She felt gratitude towards him once again and said in a soft voice, "Thank you, Yemo. Thank you for your birthday present." She didn't think about how Yemo got this pond of water and didn't think why it would be here. She was already satisfied and didn't want to doubt something she got so hard. Yemo stood by himself at the entrance of the cave, waiting for Luo Susu. He suddenly thought if Luo Susu would be his master, but then he immediately shook his head. Luo Susu obviously didn't have the same situation as him. She was herself, the same as her 20 years ago. But even knowing that she wasn't his master Luoing, Yemo still couldn't face her with a calm heart. And Yemo kept this thought at the bottom of his heart that, what if she was Luoing? Seeing Luo Susu wash up and come back, Yemo's eyes brightened up. He couldn't help but to be in complete awe for her. She didn't change clothes, didn't have any makeup, but one couldn't tell she had been in the desert for many days. He really didn't know how she did that with just water. She still didn't wear a face cover, but held a bottle of water in her hand. Yemo didn't take the water from Luo Susu's hand, but instead passed a few biscuits to her and said, "This is what you gave me, you should eat a few too. I'm going out, what about you?" Luo Susu took the biscuit and nodded. "Michim, we'll go out together. Perhaps?" She didn't continue talking and paused for a bit before saying, "Did those men with guns come for you? Do you need me to help you?" Yemo shook his head and smiled. "I won't need your help for those people, let's go." Luo Susu didn't ask a second time. Since Yemo didn't need her help, it meant he had his ways. On the way, Yemo didn't ask Luo Susu what she was doing here, and neither did Luo Susu. It was as though they just met. The return journey was very fast with Luo Susu's guidance. By night time, they had already arrived by a road. Although this was still inside the desert, they only needed to follow the road and they would be able to leave the desert. The Nanqing people seemed to have disappeared. Yemo and Luo Susu had reached a public road and there was not even one from Nanqing. However, they did meet another group that was going into the desert for adventure. It was already dusk time when Yemo met them. The group saw it was just the two of them and that they just came out of the desert without any equipment. The group provided a tent and some food and water for them. Luckily, it was dusk and Luo Susu's complexion didn't show. Otherwise, it would cause a rupture. With these things, Luo Susu and Yemo didn't seem to be in a hurry anymore. Although they didn't talk much on the way, sometimes they didn't even talk for a whole day, they liked this feeling of serenity. And what made Luo Susu even more grateful was that Yemo had never entered the tent. He was always outside. Even when she told him to come in and rest, he wouldn't come in, or he came in for a while and left. Even the time Luo Susu slept, her heart was very peaceful, because she knew Yemo was just outside the tent. Ning Qingxue and Qi Wanqing searched the desert for many days with the help of their group, but still didn't have any news of Yemo. Their supplies were almost used up, and the weather was getting hotter. Although Ning Qingxue and Qi Wanqing wasn't too keen, they could only follow the group out. The next time they could look, it would be near May to June. That wasn't a time when one can just come and leave the desert. Qingxue, look, there are people sleeping outside at the border of the desert. This is so romantic. The closest hotel is only 6 kilometers away. Although Qi Wanqing also wanted to find Yemo as soon as possible, Ning Qingxue seemed glum, so she tried to find some conversation to cheer her up. Ning Qingxue looked at the tent in the desert, but she was immediately stunned. The person at the door of the tent was Yemo. She suddenly felt her nose to be sour. She had looked arduously for half a month, but saw Yemo just when she left the desert. Was the heavens taking pity on her? Qingxue, what's wrong? Qi Wanqing saw Ning Qingxue's tears and looked over at the tent. It really was Yemo, and he was standing right outside. It's brother Yi. Qi Wanqing suddenly felt as though she was going to suffocate. She was stunned and finally remembered to tell the driver to stop after a long time. Just when Qi Wanqing and Ning Qingxue charged off the car, they immediately stopped their steps. This was because a woman came out of the tent. She was actually living in the same tent with Yemo. I'm going. Luo Susu's words were very simple, as though countless words weren't as meaningful as these few. I know. Yemo seemed bitter. He didn't know how to describe his current feeling. Silence. It was a suffocating silence. After a long time, Yemo said once again, "Can I go look for you?" Luo Susu didn't speak and suddenly took out a silk cloth and gave it to Yemo. "Help me wear it." Yemo helped Luo Susu put it on, and Luo Susu suddenly took the bottle of water Yemo gave to her. "I'll take this. Don't look for me. You won't find me. If you find me, it would do harm to us both. I won't say goodbye. Thank you for giving me the happiest birthday." Yemo fell silent. She thanked him not for saving her, but for giving her a birthday present. Chapter 113. People always meet at departure. Chapter 113. People always meet at departure. Looking at Yemo help Luo Susu put on the face cover, Ning Qingxue suddenly stopped in her steps. Yemo didn't notice her at all. Instead, he focused on helping the woman wear the face cover. It was as though there was only the woman standing in front of him in this entire world. The bitterness in Qi Wanqing's heart was as vicious as Ning Qingxue. She also stopped her steps towards Yemo as she looked at Yemo and that girl not knowing what to do. She didn't know their relationship, but they seemed so intimate. However, Qi Wanqing thought for a while but still walked over. Seeing Qi Wanqing walk towards Yemo, Ning Qingxue also collected herself. She suddenly thought, why would she be like that? Yemo married her to help her. Why would she feel uncomfortable? If Yemo had someone he liked, she should be happy. She didn't want to marry Yemo because she loved him. Instead, it was because she was grateful towards him. Was it really like that, though? She didn't dare to ask herself, and she didn't have the answer either. At least, she knew she wasn't able to become happy now. Ning Qingxue? Qi Wanqing? How are you guys here? Yemo finally saw the two who came up. Ning Qingxue and Qi Wanqing could both only say one word. How should they talk? Were they going to say they came to the desert to look for Yemo because they missed them? However, Yemo was no longer the same Yemo. His EQ was no longer infinitely low. He could see what they meant. He could tell they came to the desert because of him. Qi Wanqing knew he was coming to the desert, but how did Ning Qingxue know? How did they know each other? "You are Qingxue?" Luo Susu suddenly asked. Her tone was very plain. "Yes, and you are?" Ning Qingxue looked at this woman in surprise. Although she wore a cover, that beauty and figure even made Ning Qingxue feel insecure. She could imagine how stunningly beautiful this girl was once she took off her face cover. Qi Wanqing was also obviously attracted by Luo Susu. Even girls had a good impression of her naturally, much less men. Thinking about this, she looked at Yemo and sighed. Excellent people would always be found by others. She could find Yemo, but so could other people. "I'm Luo Susu." Luo Susu's eyes flashed a look of relaxation as she said plainly, "You are my aunt?" Ning Qingxue finally understood that this woman was her aunt. The woman who lived in the same tent with her official husband was her aunt. Her eyes disclosed a sliver of disappointment. Meanwhile, her heart was in a mess. Although this aunt wasn't related to her, but it was still her aunt. She didn't think she would love the same man as her aunt. Ning Qingxue suddenly stopped thinking. Did she like Yemo? Although she didn't want to admit this, but she had to eventually admit that her care for Yemo had exceeded more than just guilt and gratitude. Yemo and Qi Wanqing both didn't expect that Luo Susu was Ning Qingxue's aunt. The atmosphere became awkward. Luo Susu didn't like talking, so after seeing Ning Qingxue was fine, she blandly said, "Qingxue, your mother is very worried about you. You should call home and tell them you're out of the desert." Ning Qingxue lowered her head and said, "I got it, aunt." "Yi brother, did you finish your things?" Qi Wanqing saw things were awkward, so she asked. Yemo nodded. "It's done. I'm preparing to leave." "Okay, then let's go together on the car." Qi Wanqing smiled and said. Luo Susu shook her head. "No need, Qingxue. Tell your mother then after I go back." Luo Susu paused and eventually didn't say that she wasn't coming out again. Before Ning Qingxue could reply, Luo Susu looked at Yemo and said again, "I'm going." There was just those simple words without any other expressions. She knew that after this farewell, they would perhaps never see each other again. Although she felt some reluctance to leave, Luo Susu simply thought how Yemo saved her and gave her the happiest birthday present, which created this certain feeling. As long as she went back and cultivated, She could find her mental state once again and not be troubled by these things. As time progressed, she would perhaps forget about it. Yemo looked at Luo Susu's gradually disappearing figure and felt a faint sense of sadness. He really wanted to go up and say don't go, and just cultivate with me, but he couldn't find any reason to. Although Luo Susu looked very docile and silent, she had her own opinion on things. Finally, Luo Susu's figure disappeared. Yi brother, she had left. Chi Wanqing saw Yemo was still staring at the path Luo Susu left, so she could only remind him. Oh, she already left? Yemo suddenly woke up and saw Chi Wanqing and Ning Qingxue staring at him. He could only awkwardly say, I was lost in thought just then. Ning Qingxue lowered her head as if not wanting to talk while Chi Wanqing sighed. Seeing their expression, Yemo coughed and asked, How are you two together? Chi Wanqing quickly adjusted herself and told about how she and Ning Qingxue went a flowing snake to look for him. Yemo looked at Ning Qingxue in surprise. He didn't expect her to go look for him at Flowing Snake. That wasn't a place a girl should go. It seemed that Fong Nan was a good person. He remembered that night when he treated Ning Qingxue and heard that she was well prepared and couldn't help but to feel guilty. Thinking about this, Yemo could only say, Actually, some things aren't what you think they are. Don't go to a place like Flowing Snake again. If something happened, Yemo didn't know how to explain it to her. Sorry, Yemo, I just wanted to find you and apologize. I know many things weren't as I thought they were and Ning Qingxue didn't know where to start and began to cry. She suddenly felt she was really weak and couldn't help herself when she saw Yemo. The thing Yemo was scared of the most was women crying, like Ning Qingxue right now. He didn't know what to do and could only stand there awkwardly. If he didn't hear her last words that night, he would be better, but after hearing that, his opinion of her greatly changed. Plus, Ning Qingxue risked her life to protect that silver heart grass. No matter what reason, he was grateful to her from the bottom of his heart. Seeing the atmosphere solidify once again, Chi Wanqing said, Yi brother, why don't we get on the car and talk as we go? Ning Qingxue also looked at Yemo hopefully. She really wanted to go back to that house again, but she knew the chances were too slim. Yemo shook his head and said, I won't come with you guys. I still have other things to do. We'll separate here. We'll see each other again if fate brings us together. After knowing Chi Wanqing and Ning Qingxue's intentions, Yemo didn't want to stay here with them anymore. Originally, he didn't have any feelings for the two. Now that there was a Luo Susu, he had less space in his heart. You're going now? Ning Qingxue suddenly felt her tone was shaky. She just suddenly thought of a sentence. I'm finally losing him again. Suddenly, she thought about when did she ever had him? Yes, I'm going. Yemo seemed to feel that his tone was the same as when Luo Susu left, and felt it to be too simple, so he continued, You two should go back earlier. It's too dangerous in the desert. Sometimes, there are even things that can't be stopped by human force. He thought of the human eating bugs. If they came, even a train would be devoured, much less cars. I know. I'll go back immediately. Although Ning Qingxue was very disappointed that Yemo didn't leave with them and saw him being very intimate with her aunt, she calmed down now. Perhaps, what was hers will always be hers, but what wasn't hers wasn't something she could get by force. Although she felt bitter, but she had some unforgettable memories. After all, she lived with him for more than 20 days. Seeing his gradually departing figure, Ning Qingxue suddenly thought of what would have happened if she didn't break the marriage pact. Would he still leave like this? Thinking about this, Ning Qingxue shook her head. She was the one who left, but she didn't expect she would catch feelings for him while using him as a shield. Why didn't she care before? Perhaps sometimes, what people say are incredulous. Yi brother, if you have time, remember to go to Luotsang, my cousin's company. Chi Wanqing hurried to say, seeing that Yemo was getting far away. She was much better than Ning Qingxue. Although she also had those intentions for Yemo, Yemo never promised her anything, and the moment she saw Luo Susu, she believed that only someone like her could be a match for Brother Yi. I know. Yemo's voice traveled from the distance, and soon he increased his speed and disappeared. Yemo's voice still echoed besides their ears, but he was long gone. Ning Qingxue and Qi Wanqing stood there for a long time before Qi Wanqing said, "Qingxue, he already left, we should leave too." Then, the two no longer had the interest to talk anymore. In the morning, the sun just crawled up shining on Ning Qingxue and Qi Wanqing dragging out a long shadow on the sand. Although there were two, they both seemed exceptionally lonely. Chapter 114. Nanqing Langji. Chapter 114. Nanqing Langji. The reason Yimo didn't go with Ning Qingxue and Qi Wanqing was because it was time for him to get revenge from Nanqing. They hunted him and even almost killed Luo Susu. If he didn't teach Qianlong a lesson, then he wouldn't be called Yimo, and there was no need for him to cultivate. He was already at third stage Qi gathering now. Not only was his fireball art stronger, he could also use other magic such as invisibility, wind blade, windsurfing, and so on. He had once reached foundation establishment, so he didn't even need to practice these magic. He only needed to have the power, and he would be able to release it. He knew that Qianlong was watching him near the desert. Perhaps as soon as he showed up, there would be people to take him to Qianlong very soon. Yimo didn't think wrong. As soon as he left the desert, he didn't even enter the hotel. He was watched once again. However, Yimo wasn't the same Yimo half a month ago. He was worrying Qianlong wasn't going to come and find him, but now that there were people watching him, he gladly welcomed them. Yimo entered a hotel, took a hot shower, and got something to eat before sleeping. It had been a long time, so he estimated that Nanqing had already gathered the people they needed. As expected, just when Yimo was prepared to go out and buy some clothes for changing, he was once again stopped. The five men looked at Yimo as though he was a dead man. Yimo knew they had no concerns. Even if they opened fire in the public, Nanqing could probably deal with it. If you know what's good, then come with us. Otherwise, don't blame us if we shoot here. The man at the front had long hair. When this man spoke, he didn't have any expression on his face. It was as though he didn't speak those words. Yimo knew they were sure he was the one they were looking for. Yimo looked down at his tattered clothes. He wanted to change, but there was nowhere to buy. He did have more than 1,000 on him, though. They were already prepared for Yimo's resistance and take him away by force, but unexpectedly, Yimo said slowly, "Since we're going, then hurry up and lead the way." "What are you waiting here for? Did Qianlong die?" "You." The man wanted to attack as soon as he heard Yimo's words, but was stopped by the man besides him. This man also sneered at Yimo. "I hope you can still be so tough on the mouth not long after. Get on the car." It was a normal business car that didn't even have a brand. The five men looked at each other when Yimo got on the car without any alarm. Soon, there were 4 people who sat beside Yimo surrounding him. The other man quickly drove off with the car. Originally, they thought Yimo would definitely not just surrender like this since he was so ferocious. As soon as Yimo had any resistance, they were prepared to go subjugate him at once. This was because all 5 of them were masters among masters. They weren't the rookies who went after Yimo in the desert. However, what made them more shocked was that Yimo actually just closed his eyes and started sleeping. The men looked at each other. They didn't understand if Yimo was asking to die, or he was just thick-headed. One of the men suddenly raised the gun in his hand, and the other 3 all nodded. Although Yimo had surrendered, it would be better if they could shoot him and just make sure he didn't die. However, before he raised his gun, the few men saw that the man who raised the gun had already fell into the seat. There was blood flowing out from his forehead. Between his eyebrows, there was a hole where blood poured out. The few men looked at their member who fell down in shock and couldn't speak for a long time. It was as though the hole on his head was natural. It was as though it just grew there ever since he picked up his gun. Yimo opened his eyes and scanned the people. "If anyone else dares to touch a gun, this what'll happen to you." Then, he closed his eyes and started meditating again. The man who was driving almost crashed the car onto the side of the road after losing concentration. Meanwhile, cold sweat trickled down the backs of the other men uncontrollably. Their foreheads started to sweat as well. What just happened? He almost didn't move with his eyes closed. Yet one of their members with a gun was killed, and he was even killed with a metal nail in the head. It seemed that they were nothing different to the rookies who hunted after Yemo before in his eyes. He was never afraid to begin with. He was planning to look for trouble at their base. Thinking about the traceless metal nail, the man on the wheel was starting to shiver. The car fell into a deadly silence. No one dared to talk. Yemo's power had greatly exceeded their expectations. It wasn't something they could defend against. They could already imagine that Yemo only needed to move his hand, and the person he disliked would definitely die under a metal nail. After a long time, their breathing finally calmed down. Perhaps it was because the person who came this time was Lang Ji. Lang Ji's surname was originally Lang, but because he was so savage, he acquired the surname of Lang 1. 10 years ago, in order to avenge a brother in Macau, he charged into one of the 3 biggest gangs in Macau, Sea Shark Gang, and killed more than 23 gang members, including a master who had reached yellow level. Meanwhile, he was only lightly injured. After escaping, he met Qian Longtu, who was at a Macau casino. Qian Longtu approved of Lang Ji greatly and took him in. Now, he was one of the 3 strongest people in Nanqing and the most savage among the group. Some have speculated that Lang Ji's power had reached middle stage of yellow level. However, no one knows because those who have seen him attack were all dead. This time, Qian Longtu sent Lang Ji to the desert to blockade Yemo. From this, it could be seen how much he hated Yemo. Although Yemo did kill one of them easily, and they didn't even see the action of Yemo killing, but everyone knew of Lang Ji's power. As long as they gave Yemo to him, they believed that Yemo would be no match for Lang Ji no matter how strong he was. Lang Ji had exceeded the range of normal masters. They have also heard that masters that have reached a level was not someone normal martial artists could hold against. As such, once they calmed down, they returned to normal. Yemo didn't decide to kill much people. Nanqing had this much people that even he wasn't able to kill them all. Plus, he didn't have much enmity with the other members of Nanqing. He only needed to teach Qian Longtu a lesson. Yemo will make Qian Longtu know that a cultivator wasn't someone to be so easily hunted. The car was getting faster and faster. The driver wanted to bring Yemo to Lang Ji as soon as possible. Perhaps Yemo was too terrifying. He killed someone with a metal nail without moving. Perhaps only masters like Lang Ji could suppress Yemo's fire. Yemo didn't worry at all. No matter how fast the car was driving, he was still meditating with his eyes closed. Even if the car drove off a cliff now, he could still escape. Although these people didn't know where Yemo got his confidence from, they were more confused by Yemo's calmness. Even if he wasn't afraid of attacks, was he not afraid of the car falling off the cliff? However, they didn't worry for long. It wasn't even an hour before the car drove into a town. The town produced a lot of jade. It was a town near the desert, however. It didn't have a long history and the streets were empty. The car twisted and turned before eventually entering a manor. The manor was very luxurious and had 2 rows of wudong trees, which gave it a high-class feeling. Yemo only understood how big this place was after getting out of the car. Just by seeing how there were 2 rows of buff men standing outside the place, he knew this was probably one of the biggest gathering places for Nanqing. He didn't need someone to lead, and he just walked into the house himself. Instead of a house, it might be better to say this was a meeting room. However, it just didn't have a round table. The area wasn't large and didn't even have seats. There were also people standing on the 2 sides, but there was only 12 of them. These people looked more ferocious than the people in the yard. Of course, there were no seats just for the people below. At the very top, there sat a man with a woman beside him. The man had a few scars on his face, but the worst was a knife scar on his forehead. It was like a centipede was staying there. Meanwhile, the woman was only in her 20s and played with a small knife. When Yemo came in, she seemed to be still paying attention to her knife and didn't notice at all that a person had come in. The knife scar man saw Yemo come in but didn't say anything. He examined Yemo and then said, "You're very cocky. You dare to kill my men now? Do you know what the scariest thing in the world is? Young man, do you think it's death? I know you're not afraid of death, but I have 100 ways for you to crave death." Yemo sneered. "Congratulations, you were right. Thus, I need you to send a message to Qian Longtu. Tell him to wash his neck clean." "Humph. You got balls, but I hope you still do later." You will regret it. Hearing Yimo's words, Lang Ji was extremely furious. Up until he entered this career, there had not been a young man who dared to be so cocky to him. But before he could stand up, Yimo walked up and coldly said, "Piss off, you." Even with Lang Ji wanting to see Yimo beg for mercy, he couldn't endure Yimo's arrogance. Yimo wanted to sit in his seat, so he didn't hesitate to raise his fists and punch towards Yimo. The fist broke through the air, making sounds that even people on the sides could distinctly hear. They couldn't help but to gasp at Lang Ji's power. This was a rare phenomena. 1. First Lang is a homonym, second Lang means wolf. Chapter 115. Intimidation. Chapter 115. Intimidation. Lang Ji was very pleased with this punch. No one had dared to take a punch directly from him because if they did, he wouldn't need to attack a second time. However, what made Lang Ji feel more satisfaction was that Yimo actually grabbed towards his fist. "You're asking to die," Lang Ji sneered. He already heard his men's reports and knew Yimo's cockiness and also knew of his power. However, this person dared to catch his fist. This was no different to suicide. This guy was indeed cocky, but he didn't want to kill Yimo immediately. He wanted to torture this young man. However, the truth didn't unfold as he wished. Yimo's hand looked very slow, but it just managed to grab his fist. And Yimo's hand seemed to suddenly grow bigger. There was a fit of cracking sound and Lang Ji looked at his fists in disbelief. Forgetting the pain, he realized the sound actually came from his fists. He clearly saw that Yimo's palm was more than 10 centimeters away from his fist, but it was still crushed. Oh, not crushed. Rather, it was crunched into a soft flab. Arg! Bone-screeching pain passed up, and Lang Ji could no longer resist but to yell. Yimo raised his leg and kicked Lang Ji flying out. Meanwhile, he walked up to the chair and sat down. "Kill him." Before Lang Ji finished his words, multiple men were ready to shoot at Yimo. Yimo's movement was simple. He flung out tins of nails, and all those who prepared to charge or open fire were either shot in the forehead or in the throat. In the blink of an eye, there were only 3 people left in the room dumbfounded, other than the woman and Lang Ji. 9 people were killed in a few breaths. Despite being in excruciating pain, Lang Ji was still dazed. The pain on his hands was no longer important. What was important was that the man in front was too terrifying. The strongest person he had seen was that Xian Taoist, the second in command of the Metal River Gang. But if he were to be compared with Yimo, he seemed a little bit off. It was said that Xian Taoist's martial arts was at a very high stage. It was said that he was almost reaching black level, but even with a Taoist like that, he still felt Yimo was stronger. Moreover, he was also a martial artist who was about to reach middle stage of yellow level. This was only because he found a poverty-stricken ancient martial artist as a teacher when he was young. With his continued hard work, he finally attained his status today. However, he would have never expected that he wouldn't even be able to receive a single move from this young man. More importantly, Yimo's speed was too horrifying. It seemed that even guns were useless against him. That young girl seemed to have just discovered Yimo. She no longer had the spirit to play with the knife in her hands. Instead, she gazed at the ground full of corpses and then at Lang Ji. Then, without any sign, she flung her hand and the knife had become a white ray of light that shot towards Yimo's neck. Her knife had killed people stronger than Lang Ji because they wouldn't have the time to dodge. Yimo suddenly raised his hand and another metal nail flung out. The metal nail clunked against the blade. The blade fell to the ground, but the metal nail didn't stop and continued shooting towards the woman's wrist. Before the woman had reacted, the metal nail passed through her wrist. After a few drops of blood, the girl's face was pale as a heart-wrenching pain passed on. She knew that this wasn't the most important, but instead that her hand was now disabled. The flying knife she was renowned for wouldn't fly anymore. "You destroyed my hand? You." The girl was suddenly angry. Perhaps it would be better for her to accept death than the disabling of her hand. At least after death, she wouldn't be able to think. But without her hand, she would rather die than live. "Oh, I can't destroy it? Then I'll chop it off." Yimo raised his hand again. No one saw what he flung out, but those few who didn't die had a spooky feeling. The woman couldn't react at all and just felt her arm cool. Then, she saw a shocking event. Her hand, along with her forearm, fell on the ground. She was dazed. However, Lang Ji reacted and quickly used his healthy hand to seal the blood vessel on this girl's arm. But even so, he couldn't stop the blood from flowing out. At this moment, Lang Ji turned around and looked at Emo in fear. He didn't even see what Emo used to cut her hand. This man was too out of this world. The chairman must not have thought that the person he was trying to catch was someone like this. For those who tried to kill him, Emo was merciless. This woman was ruthless and wanted his life as soon as she attacked. This woman finally understood that her hand and arm was sliced off. She looked at Emo in fear, no longer having her previous rage. She knew that this person could kill her like a chicken. "Do you know why I didn't kill you?" Emo looked at that woman and said. Seeing that woman no longer dared to say anything, he continued, "It's because you seem to have something you rely on. I'll let you live. Go back and get whatever you rely on. I'll finish it once and for all. Oh, I'm called Emo. Don't forget." And Emo turned to Lang Ji and said, "Do you know why I also didn't kill you?" Lang Ji subconsciously shook his head. He was dumbfounded by Emo's terrifying power. Emo smiled, "Because I need you to send a message to Qianlong too. Tell him, he shouldn't have hunted me. I will go visit him. Oh, and I killed his son." Emo then looked at the remaining 3 men and said, "Do you know why I didn't kill you guys?" This time, he didn't wait for them to reply and said once again, "Because I need you to clean up the corpses on the ground. There are 9, so pile them up now. I don't like wasting time." Then, Emo no longer spoke. The remaining 3 acted very fast. They quickly piled the bodies together. Emo stood up and suddenly formed countless hand signs with his fingers. Breaths of scorching fire descended on the corpses. He was actually shooting out fireballs. Now that Emo was stage 3 chi gathering, his fireballs could easily destroy the corpses. He destroyed these corpses for 2 reasons. One was to destroy the evidence, and the other to give Lang Ji a warning. But after shooting out 10 fireballs at once, even Emo was a bit tired. Afterwards, he looked at the dazed people and coldly said, "Go back and tell Qianlong too. After I'm done with my errands, I will go visit him." Then he used the invisibility magic and disappeared. Seeing Emo just blow fireballs and destroy the corpses, Lang Ji and the others already turned into stone. But now, he even disappeared into thin air. The 3 men who had been pulling bodies finally couldn't handle it and fainted. They could kill people and hack people, but those were ordinary people. The occurrence before them was already extraordinary. Although Lang Ji was stronger than them, even he couldn't handle the situation. Even Xian Taoist wouldn't be able to fire fireballs and suddenly disappear. The chairman actually got into conflict with such a person. Was he even a person? That woman like Lang Ji was scared speechless by Emo's powers. If someone like him really went to visit his boss wouldn't be able to survive even if he had 1,000 lives. After a long time, Lang Ji finally reacted and yelled, "Quick! Stop all pursuit on Emo and Shi Ying. These 2 are the same. Take the recording today. I'm going back immediately." Lang Ji shouted nonstop until all the men outside came in. When he was fully awake, he made haste to return and no longer dared for his men to hunt Emo because they weren't even enough for exercise. He even suspected if his boss's army was enough to subdue Emo. Of course, Emo intentionally did that to let Qianlong Tu know not to hunt him anymore, even if it didn't concern him. Emo was fearless. He believed that there was people stronger than him, but there wouldn't be much. Furthermore, even if there was, they wouldn't be able to kill him. But at this moment, the Yi family in Beijing was gloomy. It was because the family's company in Europe and America suffered heavy damage. Not only did the new cooperation partners leave, even the old partners started to leave and distance themselves. Although the Yi family's enterprise was managed by the second in power He Liangfu, the ones who really benefited was the Yi family. He Liangfu was the only one in the second generation to follow his mother's surname. Now that many business were stumped, he was the most affected. If a large family was no longer supported by business income, then this family would be set to go downhill. If their business was only partially damaged overseas, then their business in Africa and Hong Kong was unbearable to see. Their personnel frequently disappeared in Africa, and their largest clothes factory was forced to shut down. Comparatively, their situation in China was better. The difference between the Yi family meeting and the Song family meeting was that the master was still the old man Yi Beirong. The Yi family situation was obviously worse than the Song family's situation. Last time, the Song family only had a third-generation useless kid die with the latter Song Shout An. It was only a youth with a little ambition. But this time, the Yi family had their finances choked by other people. Although this wouldn't beat the Yi family down. In fact, even if all of their businesses abroad bankrupted, the Yi family still wouldn't die down. However, taking damage in their finances meant negative influence elsewhere. Are you sure it's done by Qianlongtu? Yi Beirong frowned. He knew that as soon as he left the center, he decided to put the family more into business than politics since there weren't exceptional offsprings in the younger generations. But before he could do so, they were dealt such a heavy blow. Chapter 116. Tactics. Chapter 116. Tactics. Yes, it has now been confirmed that whether it's Europe or not, all our business have been targeted. In Africa, there has been multiple accounts of personnel disappearance. Those who disappeared are all those in the management level. The one speaking was a man in his 50s near Yi Beirong. He was Yi Long, the son of Yi Beirong's big brother. His position was similar to Song Hai in the Song family. Do you know why? We never had any conflict. Is he not afraid that we will sweep his Nanqing and mainland? He dares to challenge our Yi family. Yi Beirong had been in the high command for a long time. Although he was about to come down, his tone was indisputable. He indeed had such capability. No matter how strong Qianlongtu was, he couldn't come to the surface. If he pissed off the Yi family, although they couldn't completely eradicate Qianlongtu, it would be easy for them to exterminate all his forces in mainland. Even if Qianlongtu had his own army, did he dare to bring it to the border? If he did, then it would all be gone with a few cannon sounds. What craze was Qianlongtu on daring to touch the Yi family? Yi Long immediately said, I had investigated. It might be because of Yi Mo. Yi Mo killed Qianlongtu's only son and pissed off Qianlongtu. Qianlongtu probably wants to exhume his anger on us. Yi Mo had been kicked out of the Yi family. Everyone knows this. Since this Qianlongtu dares to do such things, we don't need to be afraid of him. The man speaking was a rather bleak middle-aged man. He was called Yi Huang, Yi Wenqi's elder son. Although his voice wasn't loud, everyone in the meeting room could hear him clearly. Yi Wenqi was in his 50s, barely had any hair on his head, but had thick eyebrows. However, his eyes were sleek and long. Hearing Yi Huang's words, he immediately reproached, Don't talk nonsense. Yi Beirong frowned, and after a while, he asked, I remember last time. Someone said he was going to investigate Yi Mo's matter. What was that about? Father, it was me. I heard last time that Yi Mo had done quite a lot of things. Even Shering from Ninghai was him, so I couldn't resist but to go investigate him. From the recording I took back, Shering did look like Yi Mo, but I hadn't been able to say this due to other things, Yi Wenjin immediately said. Yi Beirong's eyebrows frowned harder. After a long while, he asked, Where did you know that Shering was Yi Mo? The Song family. Yi Wenjin wasn't an idiot. He realized something was wrong amidst his sentence. He got his news from the Song family, but the Song family was always on bad terms with the Yi family. How could they be nice enough to pass him this message? Yi Beirong sighed. His son was still too immature. He didn't even see through such obvious actions from the Song family. If it was Yi Wenqi or his big brother's son, they would perhaps ask more clearly. However, he knew that even if the Yi family didn't investigate Yi Mo, the Song family would try to make Qianlongtu think that the Yi family took Yi Mo back in. They fell into the Song family's tricks. The Song family could actually let go of Song Shaoan's killer and plan big time for the future by pulling the Yi family down. Now that Qianlongtu had targeted the Yi family wouldn't let Qianlongtu go even if they knew the causes. If the two sides fought, the Song family would definitely help Qianlongtu. In this case, it would be very hard for the Yi family to eradicate the Nanqing in China, or perhaps even impossible. Yi Baron can imagine that if this tug of war continued, the Yi family would plummet. But even if he knew, the Yi family still had to make a move because the next target for Qianlong Tu would be their business in mainland. Plus, if the Yi family was attacked like this and didn't retaliate, then those businessmen who cooperated with the Yi family would all leave them, and their situation would be worse. This was a powerful move by the Song family. Now, even if the Yi family realized it, the Song family wouldn't worry the Yi family not falling for it. He didn't know how much benefits the Song family gave to Qianlong Tu to make him willing to be used. Even if Yi Baron wanted truce with the Song family, they would probably decline because that things have unfolded till now. If the Yi family fell, the Song family would acquire something much bigger than a truce. Yi Mo bought a cheap set of clothes and used the rest of the money to buy a plane ticket. He didn't even have enough to buy a bag, however. Yi Mo returned to his identity when Dong made for him. As for the name Mo Yi, he wouldn't need it anymore. He believed that before he went to find Qianlong Tu wouldn't do something such as hunting him down. Although Yi Mo dressed clean, only he had the cheapest clothes on the entire plane. However, he didn't mind this at all. Just when Yi Mo was prepared to find a seat, he noticed that the jade bracelet the old man behind him actually had spirit chi. Yi Mo scanned with his spirit sense. He saw that he was situated just in front of the old man, and the man had two women beside him. The woman sitting next to the window had a big mouth cover looking very fashionable. The other one was a middle-aged woman. Yi Mo wanted to ask the old man where he got his bracelet from, hence he wanted to sit next to the old man. As such, he could only swap with the middle-aged woman. "Excuse me, can I swap a seat with you?" Yi Mo looked at the woman and asked. The rule is not to swap seats. Before the woman could reply, the flight attendant had already spoke. The woman looked apologetically at Yi Mo. She knew what Yi Mo wanted and wanted to help him, but she wasn't allowed. In her opinion, the young man wanted to hit up the fashionable girl next to the window. The old man also showed an understanding smile. Obviously, he thought the same as the middle-aged woman. Of course, Yi Mo didn't know what they were thinking. He was disappointed and thought he could only wait until he got off the plane before he could talk to the old man. The fashionable girl heard Yi Mo's words and scanned him. Her eyes were full of derision. Even the middle-aged woman could see. She sighed. Yi Mo's courage was good, but he was just too shabby looking. She wondered how he got this plane ticket. Since he couldn't swap, Yi Mo didn't force it. He would wait till he got off the plane to talk to the old man. Yi Mo no longer talked and closed his eyes to meditate. 2 hours later, the plane arrived at Luotsong Airport. Yi Mo got off the plane first but stood outside waiting. When the fashionable girl saw Yi Mo waiting outside, she felt more disgusted. This time, she intentionally wore a mask outside but was still ineffective against such people. She intentionally walked around because she really didn't want to talk even one sentence with someone like Yi Mo. The woman obviously knew the old man. Seeing Yi Mo wait outside, they smiled on the inside thinking this young man was really persistent. However, that fashionable lady obviously wasn't interested at all. She was even disgusted, but he could still put down his dignity to wait here. However, in order to fulfill Yi Mo's wishes, the two intentionally took the other route as well, wanting Yi Mo to wait for the fashionable lady alone. Seeing the old man not walk his way, Yi Mo quickly followed. Seeing Yi Mo follow, that fashionable woman stood still disgusted and glared at Yi Mo, saying coldly, "Do you want to invite me for dinner?" Yi Mo was confused by this sentence and frowned. "I don't know you. Why would I invite you to dinner? I don't have money with me now, so if you want to be invited to dinner, ask someone else." Then, Yi Mo didn't waste any time with this woman and walked in front of the old man and asked politely, "Older brother, hello? I'm Yi Mo, sorry to disturb you, but I want to ask you a question." This was the first time the old man was called an older brother and looked curiously at Yi Mo before saying, "Hello, young man, ask me. If I know, I will definitely tell you." Yi Mo pointed at the bracelet and asked, "May I ask where you bought this from? I feel this bracelet is very special. Can I have a look?" Hearing Yi Mo's words, the old man took the bracelet off and gave it to Yi Mo without hesitation. However, that middle-aged woman was alert. A strange man asked to look at the old man's bracelet the first time they met, and this young man looked poor. However, the old man had passed the bracelet, so she didn't say anything. Yi Mo took the bracelet and felt it carefully. There was indeed some faint spirit chi after a while. He gave it back to the old man. Your bracelet is very unique, much better than ordinary jade items. If I'm not wrong, this should be a magic artifact that can make people healthy. Oh, young man, you also know magic artifact? The old man was immediately interested. He usually liked to walk around the market for ancient artifacts and was taught by many of those in the profession. A magic artifact was a thing that was blessed by someone powerful. However, their functions varied. His bracelet was indeed a magic artifact and was one of high level. However, this was given to him by a friend. This young man could tell his bracelet was a magic artifact, and this made the old man interested, since the young people nowadays rarely believed such things. Chapter 117. Heir Who Apprehended. Chapter 117. Heir Who Apprehended. Haha, no one believes such things now. I didn't expect you to be in the profession. If you want to know where these things are, just go to the loudest street of Luotsangximen. It's just that they are mixed with ordinary stuff and is hard to distinguish. Talking about magic artifact, the old man was immediately interested. Yimo smiled. He didn't want the magic artifacts. Instead, he wanted the spirit chi inside. In fact, this little spirit chi was useless to him, but he wanted to know how to create or infuse the spirit chi inside. And Yimo knew the people here didn't cultivate. So where did they get the spirit chi from? Hearing the old man's words, Yimo knew that Dao Lao Street was something like the Sea Treasure Garden in Ninghai. Other people wouldn't be interested in this topic, but Yimo and the old man were having an enjoyable conversation. Eventually, Yimo knew that the old man was called Lin Hueha. He was someone from the military and lived in retirement at Luotsang. Yimo also told him that he opened a small clinic and even gave him the address. You're actually a doctor? I really couldn't tell. Hearing Yimo was a doctor, Lin Hueha was immediately more interested. Yimo smiled and said, I'm not a doctor, I just learned a few recipes. That fashionable girl got more angry hearing Yimo's words. He wanted to chase her but was acting so pretentious. But later on, hearing him get more involved in the conversation with the old man, she understood that he never came for her and wanted to talk to the old man. Her face blushed and realized she was wrong. Yimo had now known where the bracelet came from, so he didn't talk more. He bid Lin Hueha goodbye and rushed back to the clinic. He was desperate about his silver heart grass. The Huichun clinic was very desolate, and the door was even barely open. This took Yimo by surprise. When he left, the clinic was very popular, but why was it so cold now? When Yimo came in, he saw Lu Xiaojun sitting in the shop by herself daydreaming. Where's you, heir? Yimo asked as soon as he came in. He had scanned with his spirit sense and didn't find you, Eru. Who are you? We aren't operating for now. Lu Xiaojun saw the person was very familiar, but didn't know who he was. Yimo smiled and said, You don't recognize me. I just don't have the scar on my face. Oh, master, you're back. What made Lu Xiaojun joyful wasn't the fact that the scar on Yimo's face was gone, but he came back. However, she immediately thought of you, Eru, and said, Eru was taken by the cops. Yimo was bemused. Who was a very good person, and Yimo knew his things and had a medical certificate. Plus, when he left, he told him to not take the disease he couldn't cure. How was he taken by the cops? As if seeing Yimo's confusion, Lu Xiaojun quickly explained, Yesterday, a patient came saying that his stomach was uncomfortable. Eru looked at it for him and gave him some medicine. He was well soon, but then yesterday, he came saying there was probably something wrong with the medicine, but Eru couldn't tell what was wrong, so he said he was fine. But then, that person said he was fine originally, but had problems after taking the medicine. So that person came to our clinic, causing a ruckus accusing our clinic and wanted refund. Eru didn't want to waste time with these sort of people, so he gave his money back. But then, the man said he wanted 10 times the refund. This person was obviously trying to cheat our money. Eru got angry and taught him a lesson. But then, that man called a lot of hoodlums and Eru was injured. Then, Eru was taken to the police department talking to here. Lu Xiaojun rubbed her eyes. It was obvious that Eru's injuries weren't light. She sniffed and continued. Eru was taken yesterday morning. Then, those people came in the afternoon. I called the police, but they wouldn't come. I had no choice but to give the money back 10 times. But then, some other people we have treated also came wanted 10 times refund. I don't know what they want. Only Zhang Pua and his wife continued to persuade the people. Now, Zhang brother is still using his connections to try to bring Eru out. Then, Lu Xiaoqin started to cry again. It seemed that she got along well with you, Eru, and thought about him a lot. Yimo's face sunk. The serum he made wasn't expensive, even if he raised the price 10 times, much less a few $100s. These people earned but still want to cause troubles. When hoodlums came to start trouble, not only did they not help, they also joined the ruckus and wanted to earn more. It seemed that human nature was full of greed. At this moment, another middle-aged man walked inside the clinic. When he saw Yimo, he dazed for a moment but quickly recognized that it was the man who saved his son. Brother Zhang. Lu Xiaozhen saw this person and immediately cried out. Zhang Po's face was full of guilt. Sorry, Dr. Mo, the people who started this have too much power. I can't help much. But don't worry, I'll go back and see who can help me. Yimo nodded. It seemed that there were still people who would repay goodwill. Hearing Zhang Po's words, he waved his hand and said, Zhang brother, no need. You just need to tell me who is looking for trouble. Zhang Po dazed for a moment. In his eyes, Yimo was an outsider. Even his certificates were acquired through him. Now, he didn't want him to mind this. Did he have a way? But since Yimo asked, he still said, Era brother beat up Wang Quan. Although Wang Quan is nothing, his cousin is a hoodlum in Luotsong and had good connections with both the underground world and the government officials. After Eru beat Wang Quan, his cousin got people to beat Eru and made the cops take him away. Yimo nodded and told Lu Xiaozhen, lend me your phone. Yimo took the phone and dialed to Wu Xueming. When he came to Luotsong, he heard from Wu Xueming that Luotsong was the Metal River's land. Since it was the underground world, he would be better off finding Wu Xueming. You brother, I didn't think you would really call me. How are you? Although Wu Xueming's voice was delighted, it didn't have the fervor before. As for why, Yimo couldn't be bothered to know. Only Wu Xueming owed him. He didn't owe Wu Xueming anything. I'm good myself, but my mood isn't good. You should have a say in Luotsong, right? My disciple was beat up by some hoodlums in Luotsong and was sent to the police station. Do you think I would be happy? Yimo's tone was very bland. If Wu Xueming couldn't deal with this, then don't blame him for being ruthless. He would wipe out the entire underground world of Luotsong. This group of bastards, Yi brother, don't worry. I'll give you a resolution soon, Wu Xueming said hurriedly. Although he was annoyed, he didn't think the situation was too serious. It was just Yimo's disciple. Yimo smiled and said, Do you think I'm worried? I'm not afraid of even Qin Long Tu. Why would I be afraid of a few hoodlums? Then, Yimo just hung up the phone. He didn't believe that Wu Xueming didn't know he opened up a clinic in Luotsong. Since he knew and this sort of thing still happened, he could see Wu Xueming's attitude. If Wu Xueming didn't deal with this properly, then he wouldn't hold back. Meanwhile, Wu Xueming felt cold. He seemed to realize that his attitude was problematic. He was all too clear on Yimo's ferocity. And he saved his life. Now that Yimo had this attitude, it meant that he was prepared to open up his identity to the public. Since he dared to do so, it meant that he had the power to fight with Qin Long Tu. Would a person who dared to challenge Qin Long Tu be afraid of a small gang in Luotsong? Plus, Wu Xueming didn't want to get on the bad side of Yimo. Yimo saved his life, and was someone he couldn't see through. Perhaps he really was to blame for this. He indeed didn't take notice of Yimo's situation in Luotsong. He only knew that Yimo opened a clinic in Luotsong and didn't think much of it. In his opinion, he didn't think his men would cause trouble at such a far-off place, so he didn't give specific orders. It was mainly because he had been so busy recently. But now, his men started trouble with Yimo originally. He didn't think it would be much if Yimo's disciple was beat up. At most, he would beat that hoodlum up and pay some money. But now, Yimo's attitude meant that he had a bad perception towards him. Wu Xueming didn't dare to drag it out and immediately called Luotsong. Master, did you just? Lu Xiaozhen saw that Yimo only called and no longer spoke of the issue and felt nervous. That is enough? Zhangpa didn't know who Yimo called, but Yimo just called someone, and the case was solved. Was something he ran around for 2 days so easily solved? Yimo nodded and said, "It should be fine. Thank you for these 2 days, Zhang brother." Zhangpa hurried and waved his hand. "This is nothing, it's what I should do." Yimo said, "Someday, bring your child to me again, and don't promote our clinic anymore because our clinic is about to change." Zhangpa clearly knew Yimo's ability. Now that Yimo said he would look at his child for him, he was extremely happy. Ever since Yimo looked at his son last time, he didn't get sick again. And although he still brought his child to the hospital after Yimo looked at it, he just spent some money and got nothing solved. So it was due to Yimo that his son didn't have any problems up until now. Yimo turned to look at Lu Xiaozhen, who still had red eyes. She wasn't bad-looking and seemed to be a good person. If she really liked Eru, she would be a good fit. Yimo saw a computer and printer and thought that the business here must have been good. Eru even bought a computer. Seeing Yimo look at the computer, Lu Xiaozhen hurried to say, "Because the business was so good before, I suggested to buy a computer to print forms. This would save a lot of time." Yimo nodded. "Chim, we don't need this anymore, because our business won't be too good later." "Why?" Lu Xiaozhen thought that the business would only get better after Master came back, so how could it get worse? Chapter 118. $100,000 Waiting List Fee. Chapter 118. $100,000 waiting list fee. I'll go to the backyard first and talk to you guys after Arif comes back. Then, Yimo just headed straight for the backyard. Right now, he was most concerned with how the silver heartgrass was going. He still needed them to cultivate. The silver heartgrass hadn't budded yet. Yimo examined closely. Although the seeds hadn't died, he felt that the life force inside wasn't as strong as when it was in Ninghai. It was just a bit better than flowing snake. Yimo shook his head and was bemused. Why didn't it work when the soil type was the same? Luckily, these seeds didn't die. If even these died too, he would only have 5 left. That wouldn't be a good news. There was already car sound outside. Yimo knew that Eru was sent back. The speed was quite fast. When Yimo came out, Lu Xiaozhen was holding Eru as he stumbled. It seemed that his injuries weren't minor. "Master, although Eru recognized Yimo's change was too big." Yimo nodded and said, "We'll talk about this later. Who did this to you?" "I did it." "What? Don't think he would be fine just because you found someone to release him. I'll still beat him up again." A teen in his 20s had a cigar in his mouth as he walked over. He heard Yimo's words and pointed his finger at Yimo and glanced at the 2 cops who sent Eru back. Yimo scanned this teen and coldly said, "You won't have another chance. F***CK, you're asking for it. I'm still going to beat him up now. What are you gonna do?" Then, he threw his cigar and approached. The 2 cops knew who said to release Eru. Seeing that Wang Quan was still cocky, they immediately knew he was dead. They quickly said goodbye and left knowing that the conflict that was about to occur wasn't something they could handle. "Wang Quan, what are you barking about? Hurry up and apologize to this friend." A black Mercedes drove flying by and stopped in front of Yimo. "Cousin, this guy's really top **T, don't be afraid of him. How dare he act tough in Luotsong?" Wang Quan seemed to feel uncomfortable if he didn't teach Yimo a lesson. But hearing the man from the Mercedes talk, he didn't continue approaching. The man who got off approached Wang Quan and immediately took out a cigarette and walked up in front of Yimo, smiling. "Hello, I know we're not familiar. Wang Quan is my cousin. Please forgive him. I'm Fang Jihua, but don't worry, there won't be anyone who will come to cause trouble at your place again." Fang Jihua was the overlord in Luotsong. Eru and Lu Xiaozhen weren't the innocent people before. Seeing Yimo's phone call bringing back Eru immediately and Fang Jihua still talking to her master so politely, they almost thought they saw wrong. However, what shocked them more was to come. Yimo stared at Fang Jihua coldly and said, "What sort of thing do you think you are? Piss off." Fang Jihua's face changed. He didn't think that with his power in Luotsong, Yemo would still be so arrogant with him after he was so polite. His face immediately looked bad. Since when did he receive this sort of disdain? He was thinking that this Yemo only knew some brother in the gang, and that brother just mentioned him to Brother Hong. Not long ago, Brother Hong called, and just said a few sentences about the release of Yu Eru and immediately hung up. He thought that Yu Eru had some connections in the family and found Brother Hong. Brother Hong casually said it. Moreover, to show his seriousness for Brother Hong's words, he personally came. After all, his cousin did beat up the person. But he didn't expect to be sticking his hot face to a cold butt. The man's master didn't even take him seriously. This man, Fang Jihua, who had been in the gang for a long time, started to lose face. This Yemo probably went through countless connections to get to Brother Hong. Otherwise, Brother Hong wouldn't just make such a light-hearted call. Now that he was polite to Yemo, Yemo dared to be rude. Who did this guy think he was? Since I'm not much of a thing, then I'll leave. Wang Quan, let's go. Fang Jihua turned with a blue face. If he wasn't clear on who Yemo was connected with, he would have made a move already. But now that he left, it didn't mean he would let it go. After he investigated who was behind Yemo, he would definitely make sure this little clinic had a pleasant time. Yemo glared coldly as Fang Jihua left with Wang Quan. He didn't say anything more. He wouldn't teach these people a lesson in such a boisterous manner. Moreover, even if he did, he would go to their base. He was still unhappy with the way Wu Shuiming dealt with this. If Wu Shuiming dealt with it well, he would perhaps go back. However, now that he wasn't satisfied, he would deal with it himself. Master, when did you come back? Although the two didn't understand why Yemo kicked away the hoodlum who came to apologize in such a manner, but Yu Eru never asked Yemo even if he didn't understand. Yemo checked Yu Eru's body. It was indeed beat up seriously, and there was even some internal injuries. If Yu Eru wasn't strong, he would perhaps not be able to make it and die. Yemo was furious. These people just didn't take the lives of ordinary people seriously. If Yu Eru wasn't his disciple, then he would just be beat for no reason. Even if he was killed, it would only be ruled as suicide. Wang Quan is a hoodlum. It's understandable why he wanted his money back, but why did so many other people want refund too? While Yemo was treating Yu Eru, he couldn't understand this problem. After all, there were hundreds of people. There couldn't be so much disgusting people in the world. Yu Eru had been living in Luotsang for more than a month. He was no longer the noob who just entered the market. He had experienced all sorts of things while at the clinic. Now that Yemo asked, he immediately said, many people were urged by Wang Quan and a small portion of people just wanted to earn some benefits. However, most people didn't come. Yemo nodded and thought most? Not necessarily. It was just that the clinic only opened for a month. After staying silent for a while, Yemo said, from now on, our clinic no longer treats common colds, aches, and fever. They can go to the hospital for these things. I will add a waiting list fee. Those without a waiting list place won't be treated. Master, are we going to take waiting list fees like the hospital? How much do we charge? Also $10 or so. Lu Xiaojun was shocked to hear that the clinic was charging waiting list fee. Yemo smiled and said, that will be charged, but it won't be just $10 or so. Those who want to be treated here must pay $100,000 waiting list fee for now. What? Before Yemo even finished speaking, Yu Eru and Lu Xiaojun were shocked out of their minds. $100,000 waiting list fee? The whole world didn't have such expensive waiting list fee. Yes, $100,000. And we must state that regardless of the outcome, the waiting list fee won't be refunded. Those patients who wish to be treated must sign a signature, and each month, there could only be one patient. They need to pay more for treatment fee. If there are no patients, you can just study yourselves. Ask me if you don't understand anything. Yemo nodded. The reason he said this was because he didn't open the clinic to treat colds, but to grow the silver heartgrass. Since it was far from ready, he didn't need to be involved in conflicts with the neighbors. They can go to the hospital for small colds, and his clinic wouldn't be able to handle that much anyways. Furthermore, some people were indeed disgusting. He didn't need to be doing a losing business. Although the price for his serums wasn't a loss, for Yemo, it was a loss. The reason the clinic had such an exorbitant price was, first, to avoid too many people, and second, to give him time to cultivate and grow the silver heart grass. The reason he said no refund for the waiting list fee was because he felt normal disease wouldn't be hard for him. If it really was too hard, then he just wouldn't let them go on the waiting list. But master, if we do this, aren't we shutting down ourselves? Eru immediately said. Yemo nodded. I was planning to go look for a far-off mansion. I plan to buy one. After we move away, we can close this clinic. Buy a mansion, even if it's a far-off place, it would be a few million. Master, if we buy a distant place, then there would less people who would come for treatment, Lu Xiaozhen said. She was concerned about these things. Yemo smiled and said, if the wine smells good, it doesn't matter if the shop is deep in the alley. You just need to learn the methods of cooking medicine with Eru. It doesn't matter if we wait a year or two before we open up. As for money, don't worry. I'm going to Beijing now. Some people owe me, and I'm going to take it back. Yemo really wasn't concerned about money. Li Hu owed him $500,000, and he still needed to solve things with Qianlong too. Perhaps he would be able to take some back. As for the Song family, if even Qianlong Tu didn't dare to touch him, then he didn't believe the Song family would dare to. Then after you leave Luotsong, master, do we still open the clinic? Eru was feeling anxious. A waiting list fee costed 100,000. If this spread out, they would be known immediately. No need to open up and don't promote the waiting list fee. Xiaozhen, you can register for a website and write that it can cure all sorts of absurd disease. However, if you want to know specific details, you must become a member of the website. The membership fee is 10,000. When you apply for treatment, you must clearly write out the information about the condition. If we accept, then they need to pay 100,000 waiting list fee. Yemo thought about it and said. He felt this was the best way. 1. He didn't need to expose himself. 2nd, he could avoid unnecessary conflict as well as the media attention. Chapter 119. People will always change. Chapter 119. People will always change. Fang Jihua definitely didn't expect that the reason Wu Hong hung up the phone was because he was worried and took the plane from Shenyang to Luotsong. Wu Xueming's original words were, Yemo from the Huichun clinic saved my life and I call him brother. You guys did well. Actually dared to take his disciple into the police station and beat him up. Immediately go apologize to him. If you can't deal with it in a way Yemo is pleased, then you know the consequence. Wu Xueming's intentions were that, since Yemo called him, then he should do things well. However, since Wu Hong helped him do a lot of things lately, of course he wouldn't do anything to him. However, he was going to use Yemo's incident to give him some necessary beating. Wu Hong was immediately worried. He didn't know that this thing would concern the person who controlled the actual power of Metal River, Wu Xueming, who would even tell him to apologize. From this, he could see what sort of person Yemo was. If he couldn't make Yemo satisfied, then he would know the consequence. What was the consequence? No one dared to say a thing if a few minor gang members disappeared. Thus, he was worried and quickly called Fang Jihua to send the people back. The reason he hung up was to get to Luotsong as soon as possible to apologize to Yemo. Luotsong's otherworldly leisure was a business of Metal River and was the gathering place for the gang. However, the person responsible here temporarily was Fang Jihua, and he was only a hoodlum before. He was only able to manage otherworldly leisure half a month ago. Ever since he became the man responsible for the business, Fang Jihua was able to talk to Brother Hong directly and was able to be more tough. He even put on the big brother act sometimes. He was planning to get his cousin into the place too sometime later, at least to be a small head. However, he just hadn't had the time to do this yet. After he had some pleasure at his lover's place, Fang Jihua finally felt better. But when he walked into otherworldly leisure, he unexpectedly saw his big bosses, Wu Hong's personal attendant, Three Snake. Why are you here? Didn't Brother Hong just go to Shenyang? Fang Jihua looked at Three Snake in surprise. Three Snake didn't have his usual smile and just said with a bleak face, Brother Hong is back and waiting for you in the underground room. Hearing Three Snake's words, Fang Jihua's heart sunk. A bad feeling overcame his heart. Wu Hong went to Shenyang this time because of something very important. After he finished at Shenyang, he would go to Jin City. Why would he suddenly come back to Luotsang? Even if he came to Luotsang, he rarely came here. But today, not only did he come back to Luotsang, he also came to otherworldly leisure. When Fang Jihua walked into the basement, his heart started to beat rapidly. His hoodlum cousin Wang Quan seemed to have his legs broken as he crouched in fear. On the two sides stood more than 10 men he had never seen before. Brother Hong. He only spoke 2 words and stopped because he suddenly realized that even the biggest head in his eyes was standing below. The highest was a screen, and the screen showed a middle-aged man. Could it be? Although Fang Jihua didn't know Wu Shuiming, it didn't mean he hadn't heard of his force. It was said that he forced Huang off the seat of power. As for where Huang went, no one dared to talk and ask. So when he saw the man there, and Wu Hong, who was also very respectful towards him, he guessed that this man was Wu Shuiming. You are Fang Jihua? Wu Shuiming's voice was very cold. If Mo was here, even if he was looking at the screen, he would realize this was not the same Wu Shuiming as a month ago. Now, he seemed cold and less lively as before. In this month's time, Wu Shuiming killed countless people who didn't obey him. Now, his position was fully consolidated. However, only he knew if it was really consolidated. Yes, Fang Jihua felt the chills facing Wu Shuiming's cold eyes. Wu Hong suddenly walked in front of Fang Jihua and gave him 2 slaps on the face. F***ck. You were told to apologize, not to act tough. Then, Wu Hong kicked on Fang Jihua's leg. Fang Jihua howled out in pain and knelt on the ground. Now, he realized that Mo wasn't so simple. Brother Ming, how about breaking Fang Jihua's leg and make him apologize to Mo? Wu Hong broke Fang Jihua's leg and carefully said, No need. Yi brother wouldn't want to see this sort of trash. Wu Shuiming immediately refused Wu Hong's proposal. He understood Mo's personality. Mo hated people like Fang Jihua the most. Hearing Wu Shuiming's words, Fang Jihua nearly fainted. Who was he acting tough in front of? It was someone even Wu Shuiming calls brother. Wang Quan was scared dumbfounded. He had never seen such a scene. He was just a small hoodlum. Since when could he be in the same room with such gang leaders, even if it was just a video? Although he wanted to see the gang leaders, but he didn't expect to see them under such circumstances. Break their legs and bring them over to the clinic once. Then Wu Hong, go apologize yourself. Take 100,000 for Era's treatment fee. Don't take too much. Mo doesn't like to owe people. Just say that I don't have time, otherwise, I would have came personally. Then, Wu Shuiming sat on the seat a little disinterested. A month ago, he thought that Mo was his best friend, but now, he felt he had changed a lot. Perhaps it was the feeling of being on the top. He developed extreme lust for power. He even thought that if Mo wasn't so strong and cruel, would he even come personally to deal with such minor problems? Not only this, he felt that recently, Yu Miaodong had skewed views of him and wasn't as intimate as before. Did he really change too much? But he didn't want to give up the pleasure of power. He just needed to say one word, and he could decide a person's life or death, decide the life of a business. He very much enjoyed this feeling. It didn't matter before since he hadn't tried it. But now that he did, he would definitely not give it up. When Fang Jihua and Wang Quan's cries sounded, he even felt disgusted. He wanted to kill these 2 very much. But he knew that although these 2 were irrelevant people, killing them would make his brothers feel disheartened. Plus, it was all too common for people in the lower levels to do things like Wang Quan. It was just that Wang Quan found the wrong target. When Wang Quan and Fang Jihua passed by the clinic looking like mummies, Mo knew of it because Wu Hong also came and brought $100,000 compensation. Mo didn't refuse. When he heard Wu Shuiming's words, he understood that their friendship had ended. He didn't care about Wu Shuiming's attitude. He didn't know him, only Wu Shuiming owed him. Sometimes, he really couldn't judge people based on his straightforward perception. A man who could die for a woman couldn't be very ruthless. At least, Mo approved of such a person. But now, although Mo didn't see Wu Shuiming, he could tell from the attitude in which Wu Shuiming dealt with this that he had changed a lot. Instead, Fang Nan gave him a much better perception. or perhaps a more real perception. Yemo didn't think about these things too much. For him, since Wu Shuiming dealt with it personally, he would let it go. He didn't need to waste his time for this. As for treating Wu Hong, who came to apologize, he had even less interest. Seeing that Yemo dealt with things lightning fast and received $100,000 compensation, Yu Eru and Lu Xiaojun felt more reverent towards Yemo. This master was too powerful than they thought. Lu Xiaojun originally just wanted to find a place to settle after graduation, but she didn't expect to take a liking into Yu Eru. She admired Yu Eru's skills, and when she knew that Yu Eru learned everything from Yemo, Lu Xiaojun was more reverent towards Yemo. What made her excited was that Yemo actually agreed to her studying medicine with Eru. This master looked even younger than Eru, but how was he so powerful? Lu Xiaojun asked Yu Eru, but Yu Eru met Yemo on the train also knew nothing about him. Originally, after dealing with this, Yemo planned to go to Beijing after he consolidated his Stage 3 Qi gathering. He had two things to do there. One was to redeem his promise to Zhua Igua, and another was to ask Li Hu to get the $500,000. As for whether he should go to the Song family, he hadn't decided yet. After all, although he was Stage 3 Qi Gather, it wasn't a wise choice to fight with the Song family overtly. The Song family wasn't Qin Long Tu whom he could compare power with. If he was to fight against the Song family, there would be a lot of concerns. One misstep, and he might not even be able to stay here. Now, Yemo knew of some things about ancient martial arts. At the same time, he understood that there was still a lot people stronger than him. It had only been 4 days, and someone had already come to look for Yemo. It was the person he met on the plane, Lin Hueha. Older brother, how do you have the time to come to my small clinic? When Yemo departed the airport, he told Lin Hueha his address, but didn't expect this old man to really come. Hee, brother Yi, as soon as I saw you really have a clinic here, I knew I found the right person and you didn't lie to me. It was right of me to come look for you today. There's something that I don't know if you're interested. Lin Hueha saw that Yemo really did live here, just as he said, and had a better impression of Yemo. Chapter 120. Magic Artifact Social. Chapter 120. Magic Artifact Social. What thing? Yemo thought that he knew the old man because of Magic Artifact Bracelet. Was it related to Magic Artifact? 3 days later, West Door, Lauda Street, will open a Magic Artifact Exhibition Social. It is said that all the elite in the profession of the country will go. Even some foreign merchants are attending, and some of the products will be provided by the ancient martial arts sections. Of course, they want to sell for money. If you're interested, brother, then you can come with me. When Lin Hueha spoke, he was very excited. After speaking, he seemed to have thought of something and said, "Oh, perhaps you haven't heard of ancient martial arts, no matter. I'll explain it to you then. In fact, I don't know much, but the things they have are really good products. They would only sell a small portion each year to exchange for money. However, it's just that the price is overwhelming high." Hearing there was ancient martial arts sects, Yemo was interested. Even if these sects weren't involved, he wanted to see how the magic artifacts were here. He was thinking if Luo Susu was also from the ancient martial arts sections. It seemed so. Now, he didn't have any contact of Luo Susu and didn't even know where she lived. If he knew where she lived, then perhaps he would be able to go find her. Even if he was to, it would have to wait after he had dealt with Qin Long Tu. But hearing Lin Hueha say the products were overwhelming expensive, he didn't have that much money. He only had $100,000, and he just gave it to Hu. As for Li Hu's $500,000, he hadn't asked for it yet. As such, he couldn't help but say, "But I don't have much money, and the prices are so high." Lin Hueha also showed his hands and said, "I don't have much money either. I'm just going there for a look." Yemo thought and agreed. He would go there first and see. Plus, no matter how good their magic artifact was, could it be better than his? He was a real cultivator. Perhaps he could bring something there to sell. Older brother Lin. Before Yemo finished his words, he was interrupted by Lin Hueha. "I'll call you brother from now on, so you just call me Brother Lin." It's hard nowadays to find a friend who also likes magical artifacts. Why not? In that case, I won't be polite then. Yimo wasn't someone too fussed about this. Although Lin Hueha was so much older than him, he was open. Do you think I can bring something to sell there? Yimo hadn't been to this social before, so he had to ask Lin Hueha. Lin Hueha asked in surprise, "Ye brother, you can make your own magic artifact?" Yimo smiled and said, "I can make some, but they are all ordinary. I'm preparing to make some simple artifacts and some medical pills I made. Does that work?" "Of course it does. I'll help you get a stall. You go prepare the things first. I'll come for you 3 days later." Although Lin Hueha was surprised, he felt it was normal after thinking about it. After all, Yimo could recognize magical artifacts. Now that he said he could make some simple ones, it wasn't too surprising. There were too many magical artifacts on the market, but no one knew if they were really effective. Even if he made a few fake ones, as long as he sold it, it would be fine. There were too much fake ones in the market now. Perhaps there was only one real one amongst 10,000. In 3 days' time, Yimo made 5 magical artifact necklaces. It was much cheaper to make than bracelet, but this time, Yimo didn't use cheap jade. He had $100,000 now and wanted to sell these for a good price, so he used good jade. Not including production cost, each necklace costed more than $10,000 just for material cost. Other than this, he used the remaining $90,000 to buy some medical herbs, putting them with the ones he collected from the borderlands. He made some pills, 12 in total, but he prepared 12 bottles. He wanted to sell these for a good price. Because this exhibition social was showing runic paper, magic artifact, and all sorts of blessed items, it would catch too much attention if he sold those things here. As for runes, he didn't dare to make them because his ones were too extraordinary compared to the ones here. The runes sold here were usually made by street artists. Some had mind-cleansing properties, but compared to Yimo's runes, they couldn't even be said to be runes. Not only could Yimo's runes attack, it could also cure disease. Now that he was stage 3 chi gathering, the attacking runes he make could even kill people. It would cause too much sensation. Plus, it took too long to make them. Even though Yimo was stage 3 chi gathering now, it would be great if he could make one a day. As for medical pills and protective necklaces, if he sold it, people could only know its effect after time. Plus, even if the person who bought it knew of the effects, they wouldn't know who sold it. From Lin Hueha's description, there would be so many people going, and it would be very messy. Who would know he sold it? Even if they did, he could push the blame to someone else. Plus, Lin Hueha told him, the buyers only looked if the items were real, they didn't care who sold it. Only some of the ancient martial arts sex items were popular, but they were very little in amount. When Yimo prepared everything, Lin Hueha had already come looking for him. But this time, he didn't come by himself, he was sent here by a car. Yimo gave a medical pill to Lin Hueha. Lin Hueha didn't act polite and just took it. In his eyes, Yimo's skills were passed down from his ancestors. Although it could cure some diseases, it was very limited. The reason he took it was to accept Yimo's goodwill and that he helped Yimo. If he didn't take something, perhaps Yimo would doubt him. Seeing Lin Hueha just take the pill without even asking him about its effects, Yimo knew what Lin Hueha thought but didn't care. He just reminded, "Lin brother, this pill is passed down from my ancestors called emergency pill. Not only does it have emergency saving effects, but can also cure some internal wounds." Although Yimo reminded Lin Hueha still didn't care that much. However, that young driver smiled after hearing the words. It was Lin Hueha's character to take a liking into these strange stuff. Even the friends he made seemed to be selling fake medicine. But from his conversation, Yimo got to know that Lin Hueha was originally the mayor of Huyang City but had retired. However, his son, Lin Jidan, was the current vice mayor of Luotsang, but Lin Hueha didn't talk much about this. Yimo thought no wonder that despite looking amicable, Lin Hueha had the temperature of someone in authority. He was the last mayor. Lin Hueha saw that Yimo's expression remained the same after introducing himself, and still called him Brother Lin. Lin Hueha nodded to himself. He felt that Yimo was indeed not as simple as he looked. This could be seen from their conversation. The reason Lin Hueha told him his identity was to see if Yimo was someone to form stronger bonds with. However, he would be no different to normal people in Yemo's eyes, even if he was the American president, much less a mayor. If someone else was to suddenly know that they met a mayor, they would immediately try to suck up to him, especially when this mayor's son was also a mayor. However, Yemo still treated him like a normal person without any signs of excitement or abnormality. He was still mainly asking about the exhibition social. After talking with Lin Hueha, Yemo got to know more about the exhibition. Normally, those who could go in were rich merchants or people with a certain degree of fame. Not everyone could go. It meant that it was mainly due to Lin Hueha that Yemo could go in. The place could allow for 3,000 people, and it would still be very spacious. However, due to the restrictions of the place, those people who came were either rich or powerful. So other than the stalls exhibiting items, the entire place would be rather empty. The middle of the place even had a testing area. Lin Hueha also asked others for help to get Yemo a stall. However, because most people's stalls took up a large place, Yemo could only get a small corner at the edge. However, this was enough for Yemo. He wasn't selling much and didn't want to be too high profile. When Yemo and Lin Hueha came in, he showed Yemo his stall and quickly went to meet his old friends. He came to this place wanting to buy another good artifact, but he wasn't too familiar with this. He originally wanted Yemo to help him, but now that Yemo had his business, he could only get a few old friends to look with him before asking Yemo to make the final decision. Yemo didn't have much things to begin with. He really only needed a table. His things were in his pockets and could be taken away easily, unlike most stalls that were not only big but also had huge banners. Just besides Yemo's stall, there were all sorts of banners showcasing stalls. However, a banner not far ahead caught Yemo's attention. It said protective necklace and had a big ancient word. Yemo thought this was probably the stall the ancient martial arts sects had. He could go have a look later and ask about Luo Susu's sect. Chapter 121. Yemo's Stall. Chapter 121. Yemo's Stall. Yemo estimated that the price for his stall wasn't cheap. By the looks of it, either Lin Hueha or someone else paid for him. However, Yemo didn't necessarily have to give money because the cost for that pill was more than 10,000. Yemo came relatively early, but just when he sat down in front of his stall, people progressively came in. The very spacious exhibition center immediately became very populous. The people who came here all seemed to have some social status. Although it was loud, it wasn't boisterous. Most of the people headed straight for where they were interested, looking for what they wanted and asking for the price. However, Yemo found that even the cheapest things here were a few $1,000s. Better things were easily in the 10,000s and hundreds of thousands, even million. Looking at these people spend money so easily, Yemo couldn't help but sigh that a part of the people in this world were very rich. Thinking back before, he was very happy that one charm could sell for $10,000, but now, Yemo found that a very polished-looking charm that had no use was sold for $18,800. He scanned with his spirit sense and found that the best sellers here were some protective amulets or artifacts that gave good fortune or health. Those stalls that had ancient words had especially good business. Yemo took notice of their things. The cheapest one was around $200,000 and was non-negotiable. Although these stalls had good business, other stalls didn't dare to copy them. Otherwise, using those ancient characters would make their business better too. However, Yemo found that the real magic artifacts here weren't much. There were rarely any which emitted spirit chi. Even those stalls with ancient characters didn't have much. There was rarely one or two, but the price was absurd. However, just because they didn't emit spirit chi, it didn't mean they were useless. Yemo had great expertise in this. He scanned with his spirit sense and knew there were some real magic artifacts. However, although they look exquisite, their functions really couldn't be praised. It could be said that not one could be even 1% effective as his. However, what made Yemo disappointed was that although his things were the best and didn't intend to sell for much, his stall was still the least visited. Although there were a lot of people, they rarely came to his stall. Even if they did, they didn't even bother to ask for the price. This business was hard. Yemo sighed to himself. It seemed that it was due to his small stall and no banner. If he couldn't sell one, then he wouldn't be able to get back a single dollar of the 100K he invested. Suddenly, Guillermo saw someone familiar. It was the fashionable girl he saw on the plane. However, she had a young man in his 20s to 30s by her side. Guillermo didn't expect her to be interested in magical artifacts. When Guillermo looked at her, she just happened to turn around and see Guillermo. This was a good-looking woman, but Guillermo didn't like her just by looking at her eyes. It wasn't that her eyes weren't pretty, they were just too snobbish. Her lips were also a bit thin, but her sunflower seed-shaped face was quite nice. However, paired with her eyes, it made Guillermo feel repulsed. She obviously saw that Guillermo had a stall and walked over immediately. Originally, she thought Guillermo was looking for her in the airport but didn't expect to lose her face. This broke her good self-esteem, making her very unhappy. Didn't think you sold these things. How much is this necklace? Get one for me. I'll think of it as charity. This woman had a disdainful look, meaning that she was doing charity by buying something since Guillermo's stall was so cold. 800,000. Guillermo didn't even bother to raise his head. The woman's expression made him feel disgusted. It was as though he was a beggar. Originally, Guillermo planned to sell this necklace for $50K, 80K, but because he was unhappy, he just said $100,000. And he saw that those ancient martial arts stalls sold things for $100K, 200K at least. But compared to his necklace, they were miles away. What? This woman exclaimed. But she immediately realized she lost her rich lady attitude and sneered. Do you think you're an ancient stall? A necklace that is worth only a few $100s becomes $100,000. You want to extort money from me just because I took pity in you. No wonder you don't have business. Keep trying to sell that. And yen, why waste your time with these sort of people? If you want a necklace, we'll go look for one at an ancient stall. I'll pick one for you for your birthday next month. The man at her side said quickly. This woman frowned and looked at Guillermo's necklace, realizing that she actually quite liked this style. That necklace looked quite pleasant, but this guy was too annoying. I'll give you 10K, you're earning big. I'll have one of the necklace. From Yan's eyes, she was giving Guillermo a lot by buying a necklace that wasn't worth more than $1,000 for $10,000. Originally, she adopted a pitiful attitude, but because she saw how pretty it was, she wanted to buy one but didn't think this shabby-looking stall owner dared to extort her. Not selling. Guillermo didn't even want to talk to this woman anymore. I'm giving you money. Are you selling or not? This woman was quite annoyed. In her eyes, Guillermo was too greedy. Guillermo plainly said, Do you want to buy with force? The thing is mine. I can sell it for however much I want. I didn't force you to buy. Move aside. Don't block my business. Okay, I'll see how much you can sell today. Don't come begging for me to buy it in the end. 100K. I'll see how many you can sell. This fashionable lady didn't heed to the persuasion of the man beside her and stood by the side wanting to see if Guillermo could really sell it. Guillermo sneered. $100K is the price just then. Now it's $200,000. He was extremely unhappy with this woman. It was his business. What did she have to do with it? He was the one who decided whether or not he sold it. And Yen was infuriated by Guillermo's words. In her eyes, Guillermo was doing it for her. $100,000 wasn't much for her, but she just wasn't happy. Although she liked this necklace, she didn't want to spend an extra $90,000 for no reason. This necklace is so pretty. How much is it? A middle-aged man brought two girls that were younger than 20 past Guillermo's stall, and one of the girls suddenly discovered Guillermo's necklace and stopped immediately in exclamation. This middle-aged man also stopped and said, You've been around once and hardly said anything was beautiful. If you like it, Dad will buy one each for you too. Guillermo looked at these two girls. They looked very alike and refreshing, so perhaps they were twins. But hearing the man's tone, he seemed to be very rich. He meant that as long as his daughters liked it, he would buy it. But his daughters didn't find anything they liked after looking around for a while. Dad, I want one too. There are two exactly. One each for me and sis. This necklace is really pretty, another girl said quickly. Guillermo was speechless. The magic artifacts he made were for protection and health, but they attracted people due to their looks. "Boss, how much is one?" the middle-aged man asked immediately. He wants to sell high few $100 worth thing for $200,000, and Yin, who hadn't walked away, immediately said. Yimo coldly looked at Yin. This woman was too annoying. If she didn't buy, she can piss off, but she was still being nosy here. "What are you looking at? Can't I tell the truth to others?" And Yin looked at Yimo's glare and immediately yelled out in discomfort. Yimo didn't want to deal with her. He only sold his things to those who realized its worth. However, the middle-aged man just smiled and didn't seem to change his will due to Yan's words. He just looked at Yimo and asked, "May I ask, is this $200,000? Seeing that the middle-aged man still asking this question even after hearing Yan's words, he immediately knew this middle-aged man had his own will and was very rich, or he didn't care about this money for his daughter's birthday. Indeed, $200,000? Yimo didn't think it was expensive to sell one necklace for $200,000. His necklace was worth this. Those that were worse than his could sell for more than this. "Okay, I'll have two. This necklace is very pretty indeed," this middle-aged man immediately said. Yimo heard the middle-aged man and hurried to say, "I'm not selling this necklace for $200,000 for its looks. It has two functions. One is for a lifetime, and that is to promote health. Those who wear this would rarely get sick. Another function is defensive. It has 3 charges. After using it up, this necklace would be gone." Seeing that Yimo was still bluffing, and Yin felt more annoyed, but she couldn't do anything. This middle-aged man obviously didn't care about Yimo's words. In his opinion, if Yimo's necklace really had such powers, he wouldn't be selling it on such a small stall. "Dad, you should buy one too. It has defensive powers. We can have one each," one girl immediately said. Chapter 122, Buying Spree. Chapter 122. Buying spree. The middle-aged man obviously loved his daughters, and hearing their words, he immediately said, "Okay, one of each of them. Boss, is there another one of these?"
Yes.
Yimo took out a third necklace and put it on the table. Seeing Yimo take out a third one, there was more contempt in Yan's eyes. If its functions were really as Yimo said so, then this necklace should be very precious, but he was able to take out this many at once. Thus, it could be seen that this was probably mass-produced from a small factory. If real magic artifacts could be made so easily, then magic artifacts would be sold cheap and not worth money. Although she wasn't too familiar with the business, she still understood that magic artifacts were rare. Even here at Loudest Street, there weren't a few real ones. Everyone knew this, but there was still a lot of people who bought them. There was no other reason but that they want to meet a real one. Although that middle-aged man knew Yimo's items were fake, he was disappointed after seeing Yimo take out so much. However, that disappointment went away quickly. He knew it was fake and only bought it because his daughters liked them. "Boss, I want 3. Help me package it, please." This middle-aged man was straightforward. "Okay, 3 is $600,000, but I'll give you a discount, $500,000. Yimo casually deducted $100,000. Seeing Yimo deduct $100,000, this middle-aged man found himself bemused. In his eyes, people like Yimo were here to scam people. The more he did, the better. How could he just take off $100,000? Of course, $100,000 wasn't much for him, but looking at Yimo's clothing, $100,000 should be a big number. But soon, he understood that Yimo really took off $100,000. This wasn't 100 or 2, it was a whole $100,000. However, Yimo didn't feel it was anything. He had a good impression of the middle-aged man. Although $100,000 wasn't little, he felt that money wasn't the most important thing. If he wanted money, he could think of ways at any time. Moreover, his online clinic was about to start soon. Would he worry about not having money to earn? The middle-aged man's look obviously showed that he thought the necklace was fake, but he still bought 3 without bargaining the price. This made Yimo approve of him greatly. No matter how much money he had, it was still his money, and being able to spend it meant that he loved his daughters a lot. Plus, he never intended to sell the 3 necklace for $600,000. $200,000, and he would be happy. Now that he sold them for $500,000, he was very satisfied. Help me package it and tell me your card number. We'll go to the tax district together. I'll give you the money now, this middle-aged man said with satisfaction. Emo just realized now that he didn't have packaging nor a card number and couldn't help but to say, I don't have a package, and it doesn't matter if there's no packaging. I'll wear it now. Then, one of the girls already put the necklace on and stuffed it inside her clothes. This necklace feels really comfortable. The girl immediately felt a spirit-cleansing sensation. The middle-aged man smiled and didn't talk. He thought that his daughter wanted to tell him that the money was spent wisely to make him feel better. Okay, but don't tell me you don't have a card number too? Looking at Emo's troubled face, the middle-aged man joked. Emo helplessly said, I really don't have a card number. He was indeed a povo one. And Yen originally felt jealous hearing the girl say the necklace was comfortable. After all, she liked the necklace too. But now that she found out this person didn't even have a card, she wondered how the necklaces were made. Emo only just realized that each stall had an individual for payments. Other than his stall, the cashier also had to give tax. It seemed that he was indeed a bit rushed. This necklace is quite pretty. How much? Just when the middle-aged man also didn't have a way, another person came to ask for Emo's necklace. 200K? Emo just sold it for $200,000. Obviously, he can't give two prices. The person asking was a youth not much older than Emo. There was also a lady beside him looking in her 50s. However, she didn't look too healthy. Mom, this necklace is quite pretty. I'll buy one for you. This youth seemed to have a filial heart. The middle-aged woman also felt that the necklace was pretty and hesitated before saying, It's quite pretty, but the price is too expensive. Although the youth didn't feel 200K was expensive, he seemed to be afraid of his mom reproaching him for wasting money. And someone else bought it just then, so it would be implausible to bargain. Looking at the porcelain bottle on Emo's table, seeing it write all sorts of pills, he immediately came up with an idea and hurried to say, How about you give me a bottle of pill as well? The reason he wanted to buy the pill was to prove to his mother that he wasn't being scammed. In fact, he didn't plan to have the pill. For magic artifacts, he can adopt a test-it-out attitude, but for these unknown pills, he definitely wouldn't believe it. Emo could only helplessly touch his nose and say, This pill isn't a bottle of pill. There is only one in each bottle, and it's more expensive than the necklace. The production cost for these pills are indeed higher than the necklace. If he just gave it out like that, then he would be losing. Hearing Emo's words, this youth was dazed. Buying a pill for him was like buying fake medicine, but it actually costed more than the necklace. That meant it was more than $200,000? And Yen felt more contemptuous towards Emo. This person's heart was probably black. $200,000 for a necklace and an unknown pill sells for more than $200,000? She really wondered how the exhibition let a cheat like him in. Although she wanted to leave more than once, but she couldn't let go of that necklace. However, she was too embarrassed to drop her dignity to buy it. You're saying that this pill costs more than $200,000? Although he was rich, the youth was still shocked that one pill costed $200,000. He came here knowing that the price wouldn't be cheap, but $200,000 was too horrible. What pill is this, actually costing more than $200,000? An old man on the side heard and immediately came up to look at the porcelain bottles on Emo's stall. Including the middle-aged man and his two daughters, there was more and more people coming to Emo's stall. This necklace is so pretty. I also want one. How much? Another woman younger than 30 came here. Emo couldn't help but decide that his necklace was really attractive to women. However, although this woman had a good body that could even be described as busty, her face really couldn't be praised. It wasn't to say that her face looked bad. Her face was not bad, but in fact, having this sense of mature woman. However, what made people not want to look at her again was that there were so many spots and they weren't those teenage acne. Although she wore shades, those spots couldn't be covered. One could imagine that if she didn't have those spots on her face, this would be a pretty lady. Everyone loved beauty, and although her face wasn't so good, she still liked the pretty necklace. Emo smiled and said, Actually, madam, I think you should buy this pill of mine more. Then, Emo took out a bottle and said, "This is a beauty pill. Only one is enough to make your face smooth and shiny like jade. However, the price is a little more expensive than the necklace." Really? The woman immediately grabbed the bottle. Although she was dubious, that desperation already betrayed her thoughts. Emo smiled once again. "Sister, I think that if you can afford a $200,000 necklace, then you shouldn't care about this $200,000 pill. Just think of it as buying yourself an opportunity. You can earn money, but you may not have this chance again. Of course, I won't force you to buy it. Decide for yourself. But there is only this chance. I won't be coming here to sell pills again." Emo suddenly realized that he was very persuasive. If he wanted to do business, perhaps he would really have potential. "Okay, I'll have one of your necklace card." That youth who came with his mom saw that so many people were interested in Yemo's things, and finally made up his mind and picked up a necklace. Before Yemo said anything, that woman said immediately, "Okay, I'll have your pill." "You're right. Even if you're a cheat, I will still give myself a chance. As for the necklace, I'll also—" Wait. A voice suddenly interrupted this woman. An old man in his 70s walked over and bowed to Yemo before continuing saying, "Patron, may I look at your necklace?" Yemo turned around and looked at that woman and said, "Sister, do you want this? If you want it, it's yours. If not, I'm giving it to this monk." "Yes, of course I want it. I want the pill and the necklace too," the woman hurried and said. The old man hurried and said, "Female patron, may I have a look first?" Hearing the old monk say this, the woman could only give it over. The old monk took it and looked. He closed his eyes and then suddenly opened it, but his eyes were getting brighter and brighter. After a while, he said, "Female patron, is it possible for you to give it to me? I'll pay 300K. What? Not only this woman was shocked, but also the people around her. To be honest, up until now, everyone has been buying the necklace because it looked pretty. The people around wasn't short of that money. Did this old monk buy this necklace because it was pretty too? At one, Povo colloquial way of saying someone is very poor in derogatory manner. You're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.